Chapter 874. Fang Xingjian said coldly, "After you return, unify the plains. I'll give you a list of resources. Bring all the things on the list to the imperial capital. From today onward, the Steel Lion Kingdom will be a vassal state of the empire. Is there a problem?" Prince Wuxian closed his eyes and sighed. "I understand. This time around, we 11 sacred generals and the Heavenly Lion King are the ones heading south. It has nothing to do with the commoners in the plains. I only hope that the imperial preceptor can treat the commoners and herdsmen in the plains kindly. They're all innocent. It's not up to you to decide whether they're innocent or not." After channeling another stream of sword intent into Prince Wuxian, Fang Xingjian brought the two of them with him and leaped onto the ground, arriving before the fourth prince. After giving a brief account of the results of the battle, Fang Xingjian continued to instruct, "Get them to send all the top-notch divine weapons from the plains and desert to Fang Qian and Wang Xiaoyan. I still need to forge a divine weapon." Although his white-bone divine sword contained the instant sword intent and had been cultivated with the heaven-connecting upper extremity sword physique, its intrinsic quality was still insufficient. Although it was sturdy, its prowess was insufficient, and its remarkable abilities were not apparent. Fang Xingjian then looked toward Tyrant, Lan Yu, the blue sacred moonlight, the astral ancestor, and the others, saying, "In the process of unifying the plains and desert, there'll definitely be many people who resist stubbornly. I'll have to trouble the few of you to help me suppress the borders and get rid of the disobedient officials." Even though he had already gotten rid of the 11 sacred generals and the Heavenly Lion King, it was impossible for the rule between races to be smooth sailing. There would definitely be people who would resist to the very end and would rather die than submit. This had nothing to do with the difference in strength. "Imperial Preceptor, you're being too polite. This is something we should do." The few of them immediately agreed politely. There was no other way about it. In the past, they might not have been much weaker than Fang Xingjian, but Fang Xingjian's rate of improvement had surpassed their imaginations. His prestige was also getting stronger by the day. Right now, with just a casual order from him, they had no choice but to treat it seriously. "Lilia Anderson." Fang Xingjian looked at the few people from the younger generation who had already reached level 29 and were even starting to strive to become demigods. He said, "When the time comes, you guys can head to the plains or desert to wipe out the resistors. This is also a good training for all of you." The battle in the imperial capital this time around made Fang Xingjian realize that his subordinates were still too weak. However, he had the mystical prince, and the core members under him had all been inscribed with mystical prince as well. All of them had great potential for improvement. Therefore, Fang Xingjian planned to give them some chances to temper themselves. If they could produce a few more divine-level experts, he would not need to do many things himself. This was especially so for the battle against the Holy Sea of Truth. It would be useful if they could have a few more gods. He then left some instructions in the imperial capital, leaving behind a stream of sword intent for the fourth prince to contact him at any time. Fang Xingjian took a step out and disappeared without a trace. The group of people who were left behind stared at the spot where Fang Xingjian had disappeared. They were filled with admiration and respect. However, Fang Xingjian did not leave. With a flash, he appeared before the Black Mage King and the Gold Mage King. The Black Mage King's countenance changed slightly, and he lowered his head and said, "Greetings, Imperial Preceptor." Fang Xingjian threw a cold glance at the Black Mage King and suddenly slashed out with his palm. This palm strike was purely propelled by Fang Xingjian's conjured physique. Its speed surpassed several hundred times that of supersonic speed, yet did not reach light speed. The surface of the entire palm flashed with a layer of chaotic glow, bringing with it a strange magical power. It was like the most terrifying weapon in the world, slowly crushing out toward the Black Mage King. Looking at the palm that Fang Xingjian had slashed down, the Black Mage King's countenance changed. He raised his hands, bringing along 1,000 black shadows as he received the palm strike that Fang Xingjian had slashed down. With this attack, the Black Mage King's hands were as heavy as mountains. Space distorted, and the microscopic world seethed. Layers of overlapping shadows appeared between his hands. They were his clones, and right now, they were joining forces with the Black Mage King to receive the palm strike that Feng Xingjian had slashed down. However, when the Black Mage King instinctively made this action of receiving the palm strike, he immediately regretted it. It was because the force from Feng Xingjian's palm strike had yet to hit his body. Just the shock waves formed from lashing out at the air had already made the Black Mage King feel as if his conjured physique was going to collapse. Damn it, why is there so much strength in just a little bit? He had watched Feng Xingjian single-handedly fight against the many experts in the plains and desert earlier, and understood that Feng Xingjian's powers had reached an extremely great level. With each and every move, he would be able to kill ordinary divine-level experts. However, it was not as if the Black Mage King had not made any progress during this period of time. Over the past 2 months, by continuously comprehending the profoundness of the wordless monument, the Black Mage King's martial will, as well as his understanding of the circulation of power, the profoundness of martial arts, and the microscopic world had all improved greatly. He reckoned that even if he was not a match for Feng Xingjian, he would still be able to receive a casual palm strike that was propelled by his conjured physique. However, the truth was that he was really unable to receive it. A stifled rumble rang out, strong gales blew, and a stretch of darkness suddenly extended out in the sky. It was as if void space had exploded and shattered. However, as the power dissipated, the distorted space returned to normal. The darkness in the sky gradually disappeared, and light returned. The Black Mage King's conjured physique shattered into fragments that filled up the sky. Then it slowly reassembled, once again taking on the appearance of the black-robed old man. Feng Xingjian looked coldly at the Black Mage King and said, "Don't try to play tricks before me. Black Mage King, it's just a matter of whether I want to or not if I want to kill you. If it wasn't because the Empire is in need of manpower right now, you would have died from that attack earlier." Almost at the very first moment that his marshal will scan the Black Mage King, Feng Xingjian understood the Black Mage King's strength and condition. He also understood that the Black Mage King had played some tricks. However, the matter of joining forces with the mages was still the Empire's top secret. Therefore, Feng Xingjian had come to meet the Black Mage King alone. When the Black Mage King heard Feng Xingjian's words, his eyes narrowed slightly. There seemed to be violent emotions brewing in his eyes. Given his status, when had he ever been insulted by a junior like this before? Feng Xingjian could tell that the Black Mage King was still feeling indignant and said coldly, "Humph, it seems that you still have some tricks up your sleeves. How about this? I won't dodge or hide here and will receive one of your attacks. How about it?" A hint of interest flashed in the Black Mage King's eyes. However, a short moment later, it was extinguished. He smiled and said, "I know the Imperial Preceptor's prowess even without trying. I've done badly this time around. There definitely won't be a next time." Feng Xingjian threw an indifferent glance toward him. There was neither sorrow nor joy in his eyes, which were as chaotic as the heavenly law universe. That's for the best. If there's a next time, then there's no need for the Black Robe faction to exist anymore. After teaching the Black Mage King a lesson, Feng Xingjian continued to instruct, "I'll leave a clone behind to watch over the Imperial capital while my main body heads to Earth to cultivate. The two of you will continue to watch over Demonic City and the Imperial capital respectively. Remember not to be negligent." Both the Gold Mage King and the Black Mage King lowered their heads and said, "Understood." A short moment later, Feng Xingjian left behind 10% of his powers to watch over the Imperial capital, while the remaining 90% of his powers crossed over Earth and returned to the fixed star, continuing to cultivate with the help of the sun's powers. He did not waste the 10% of his powers to watch over the Imperial capital either. Instead, he planned to cultivate with the help of the resources from the various major influences. Feng Xingjian would be able to make use of the resources in both worlds to cultivate, and he would be constantly increasing his powers. Simultaneously, just as Feng Xingjian swept through the Steel Lion Kingdom and saved the Imperial capital from danger, the 4 regions that had been attacked by the planes also underwent a series of drastic changes. Chapter 875. In the northern borders of Buluo City. As the center of the entire Empire's Bei's region, this city was the military fortress that Prince Philip had managed for many years. However, it was currently in a state of disarray. Occasionally, streams of flames and air currents would rise up from the city. Agonizing cries and furious bellows would occasionally come from the many alleys and streets. Prince Philip had been defeated in the sky above Buluo City, and the Black Mage King, who was disguised as Feng Xingjian, had escaped with serious injuries. Buluo City could be considered to have fallen completely. However, when the plane's second transition experts and many demigods came to take over the city, they were still met with resistance. An expert from the plains who wore beast skins and had rough skin stood at the top of the city wall. Looking at the scattered flames of war in the city, this expert let out a cold laugh and said, "There are still people who are resisting at this time. Great Donghu." The person who spoke was a conferred knight of the Empire. His name was Charles, and he was the sect master of Buluo City's Changza Sword sect. After Feng Xingjian was defeated and 14 divine level experts besieged the imperial capital, Charles had led the others to surrender and become the subordinates of this great Donghu from the plains. The Changza Sword sect was a top-notch faction in the Buluo City area. Many of their disciples had become conferred knights and held important positions in the Bei's region. He said, "There are only 5 to 6 conferred knights resisting. I've already sent people to take care of them. They'll be settled very soon." Feng Xingjian has held the prince hostage, usurped the throne, and committed perverse acts. Everyone in Buluo City has long been looking forward to the Steel Kingdom heading south to wipe out the rebels. Haha. Although he knew that these words were just flattery, the great Donghu was still extremely satisfied and smiled. Prince Wuxian has already led 13 divine-level experts to surround the imperial capital. Even His Majesty, the Heavenly Lion King, has turned his gaze toward the central region. There's no way for Feng Xingjian to turn the situation around. However, with the Empire in chaos, everyone will still need to work hard in the future to help the king govern these 8 regions. Just then, a stream of sword chi soared into the sky from the city, bringing along a myriad of flickering starlight. The countenance of the Changza Sword sect master changed as he saw his eldest disciple's brain crushed by a single sword attack. The other party had yet to reach the demigod realm and was now completely dead. The person who had killed this eldest disciple was a young man dressed in jade robes, holding a dark golden longsword and wearing a scarlet cloak. It was Holt from the Great Western region. He was also the Myriad Stars Palace's astral ancestor's grand disciple, Holt. This great genius, who had fought against Feng Xingjian in the Great Western region's regional selection, had been left further and further behind by Feng Xingjian after the second transition. Even the seniors in the Myriad Stars Palace, as well as the sect master, the astral ancestor, had all been defeated and convinced by Feng Xingjian. Holt was Holt. Ho. Sect master's Holt. He's Li. Right now, his greatest goal was to keep on training his martial arts. In this great era where the world's metamorphosis was happening, he wanted to grab hold of the opportunity and hope that he would be able to reach the top one day. Holt, who was focusing on improving his cultivation, also improved at a tremendous rate under the world's metamorphosis. Right now, he was already a demigod with 2 tiers of perfection. He had been sent by the Great Western region's governor to provide reinforcements to the Bei's region. However, he had not expected to witness Feng Xingjian's defeat. Even that Feng Xingjian has been defeated. The battle in Buluo City was still echoing in Holt's mind. The 11 divine-level experts had surrounded and attacked Feng Xingjian, and both sides were engaged in an intense battle. The 11 divine-level experts displayed various means, but they were still firmly suppressed by Feng Xingjian. The battle prowess he displayed was extremely astonishing. However, in the end, an extremely majestic golden light descended from the sky and knocked Feng Xingjian down to the ground. Thereafter, the entire Buluo city was taken over by the experts who had rushed over from the plains. Almost 90% or more of the Empire's knights chose to surrender. After killing his opponent with a single sword attack, Holt looked in the direction of the city walls. It was where the great Donghu and Charles were. If the imperial capital is also broken through, then we can only retreat or surrender. Holt was very clear about the current situation. The reason why he was able to continue resisting in Buluo City was because there was not a single divine-level expert present. Or rather, it could be said that no matter what battle results he obtained here, it would no longer affect the overall situation. In a battle where there were divine-level experts, even demigods and confer knights would only be able to clean up the battlefield and occupy the territory. It was as if they were doing odd jobs. After all, although divine-level experts were extremely powerful, most of them were not willing to do everything personally. Now that things have come to this, we can only think of a way to break out of the encirclement. On the city walls, the great Donghu Ho Ming stroked his chin, looked at Holt, and asked, "Who is this person?" Charles's eyes narrowed slightly as he said, "This person is the Myriad Stars Palace's Holt. It's said that he is a classmate of that traitor Fong in the regional academy." However, he felt increasingly furious as he looked at Holt. "You're really stubborn. Fong Xingjian is already destined to lose. What's the point of resisting like this other than increasing the number of casualties? You're really a fool." Thinking of how the disciple he had spent a great deal of effort to nurture had been killed just like that, the killing intent in his heart surged. Oh, hearing this, the great Donghu Ho Ming's eyes lit up. Since he's that traitor Fong's classmate, then we can't let him off. With that, he beckoned with one hand and bellowed in a low voice, "Bow." At the next moment, a resplendent beam of light flew out from a box that a servant was holding and landed in his hand. It was a longbow that was crimson red in color, seething with vigor, and filled with layers of brutal auras. This was the great Donghu Ho Ming's divine bow, a divine remains equipment. It could turn the holder's vital energy and blood into blood-colored waves and shoot them out at light speed. To confer knights who were below the divine level, such means were almost undefeatable. The great Donghu Ho Ming's hands turned into a series of afterimages, and 3 streams of blood light shot out explosively. In almost an instant, the conferred knights, who were several thousand meters away and were resisting the encirclement together with Holt, were killed. Boom, boom, boom. 3 loud sounds rang out, and the 3 conferred knights seemed as if they had been smashed by blood-colored cannonballs. They turned into balls of blood flames and then exploded, turning into countless pieces of flesh that splattered into the sky. The great Donghu has great archery skills. The Changzi Sword Sect's sectmaster, Charles, smiled and said. The corners of the great Donghu Ho Ming's lips curled up into a hint of a smile. "This is my family's heirloom archery technique, Blood Shadow Divine Shot. It can lock onto the opponent's vital energy and blood, and when shot with this Blood Divine bow, it will definitely hit its target." Just then, with a flash, Holt brought along a series of afterimages as he cut across the sky, bringing forth layers of sharp whistles as he charged out toward the city walls at 20 times that of supersonic speed. Chapter 876. What guts? You still dare to charge over? Great Donghu Ho Ming let out a cold laugh and raised his hand to shoot. Streaks of blood-red light burst out and instantly splattered around Holt, forming streaks of blood-red shadows. Each time a blood shadow exploded, it would bring forth a myriad of air currents. It was as if several 10,000 tons of bombs had exploded, and they could sink a battleship. However, Holt remained unmoved in the face of such indiscriminate bombardment. Starlight lingered all over his body, and no matter how many blood shadows bombarded his body, they only struck out layers of starlight and blocked all the explosions. Great Donghu Ho Ming revealed a hint of a brutal smile and pulled with great force. In that instant, the bow was like a full moon, and a stream of blood-colored light condensed into an arrow on the bowstring, exuding an astonishing pressure. Rumble. At the next moment, a blood-colored light pillar pierced through the world, completely encompassing Holt's location. The terrifying blood-colored light brought about overwhelming air currents, and the atmosphere in the entire Buluo city seemed to be seething. Waves of strong gales struck Buluo city, destroying countless houses within a short period of time. After the blood-colored light dissipated, Holt had already fallen back into the alley, disappearing with a flash. Charles exclaimed in admiration, "Sir, this sword attack of yours is a combination of divine cheese, and the intent is before the arrow. It could be said to be an arrow at the pinnacle of those below the divine level." Great Donghu Homing broke into a satisfied smile. "This lad has taken one of my arrows and has been poisoned by blood poison. His abilities have probably dropped to the level of an ordinary level 29 conferred knight. I'll leave him to the sect master. Mission accomplished. Be careful. Don't kill him." "I understand." Therefore, under Charles's instructions, over 10 black shadows darted out and gave chase in Holt's direction. Not long after, they found the heavily injured Holt. After a few rounds of killing, pursuit, and ambushes, Holt's aura grew increasingly weaker. Ho Ming, who was standing on top of the city wall, smiled. As expected of an influential clan in the north, the Chanza Sword sect has so many talented people in their sect. Charles smiled and replied, "Great Donghu, you're flattering us. The plains are filled with talents, and there are many experts. This expedition to the south will shock the continent and leave their names in the annals of history. It can be said to be a battle that will change the future of the continent." Just as the two of them were flattering each other and enjoying themselves, the wind and clouds suddenly surged in the sky. In an instant, dark clouds covered the sky, and waves of ferocious chi descended from the sky, causing chills to run down Dan Tang Ming's spine. He suddenly pulled out his blood divine bow. "There's an expert." In the next moment, his body moved, and the blood-colored arrow shot out. It had already transformed into a beam of blood-colored light that shot into the dark clouds that filled the sky, stirring up the wind and clouds, and piercing through a large patch of clouds. After the blood-red light dissipated, a young man with pink skin, thin cheeks, and a feminine face appeared in midair. He looked like a delicate young girl. It was Fang Xingjian's subordinate, the gray-robed wizard Tyrant. Before attaining the divine level, Tyrant had engulfed the corpses of 3 divine level experts. Later on, he had even cultivated together with Fang Xingjian with the help of nuclear energy, unifying all the physical particles in his body. After attaining the divine level, he had improved tremendously. He had also obtained Bu's flesh and blood, and his potential and strength had increased tremendously. The conjured physique he had attained was even more special. It was formed from his martial will and also had a hint of the characteristics of flesh and blood. Right now, he had already stepped into Tier 3 of the divine level. Although he had been unable to do anything when 14 divine level experts were surrounding and attacking the imperial capital, it was only because the opponents were too strong and he did not have sufficient time to catch up. Right now, he was under Fang Xingjian's orders to take back the 4 regions. Faced with these warriors from the plains who were not even divine level experts, he was naturally unafraid. With a swoosh, he appeared before Ho Ming at a speed akin to light speed. Looking at Ho Ming, Fang Xingjian tilted his pink head and said, "You were attacking me earlier, divine level expert? Who are you?" Ho Ming's heart tightened, and the blood divine bow in his hand was already aimed at Tyrant. However, his expression did not relax in the slightest, and cold sweat kept trickling down his forehead. Annoying bug. With another flash, Tyrant appeared before Ho Ming. He flicked his middle finger lightly on Ho Ming's forehead, and this great Donghu from the plains turned into dust from head to toe. Regardless of whether it was the people from the Chanza Sword sect or the other warriors from the plains, none of them dared to make any strange movements when faced with this scene. Ho Ming was a divine level expert, and before such an expert, it was meaningless for ordinary people to put up any resistance. Only an expert from the plains who had white hair, a strong physique, and a face filled with scars said furiously, "Who are you?" "We're warriors from the Steel Lion Kingdom's Heavenly Wolf Tribe. The person you've killed is a great Donghu from the Heavenly Wolf Tribe. We hope that you can give an explanation to the Steel Lion Kingdom and Lord Heavenly Lion King. Tyrant grinned. There's no Heavenly Lion King anymore. He was forced by the Imperial Preceptor to charge into the nine-tiered heavens, and his death is unknown. As for your 11 sacred generals, only one of them survived. Hearing Tyrant's words, that old man was stunned for a moment before he smiled coldly and said, "Don't joke around. The 11 sacred generals each have their own specialties, and all of them are top-notch characters in the world. They can dominate an area and have their names spread through the ages. His Majesty, the Lion King, is also a rare genius from our plains and a top-notch character in the world." Are you trying to say that they were all defeated and killed by Fang Xingjian? The more the old man spoke, the more confident he became. In the end, he looked at Tyrant with a faint smile, as if the Heavenly Lion King was really standing behind him. The surrounding experts from the plains, the Changza Sword Sect, and the other knights from Bulyuo City who had surrendered also reacted. After hearing Tyrant's words, their faces were filled with disbelief. Clearly, they did not believe what Tyrant had said at all. However, Tyrant said calmly, "Prince Wuxian, come out and talk to them." As Tyrant said this, under everyone's astonished gazes, Prince Wuxian's figure slowly appeared behind Tyrant. Prince Wuxian, who was at Tier 5 of the Divine level, had lost 99% of his powers after being ravaged and suppressed by Fang Xingjian. He would probably need 1 to 2 months before he could recover. Therefore, he was being suppressed by Tyrant. Moreover, even if he could defeat Tyrant, it would be meaningless as long as Fang Xingjian was still alive. Under everyone's astonished gazes, Prince Wuxian nodded with some difficulty and said calmly, "Mr. Tyrant is right. His Majesty, the Heavenly Lion King, has been forced into the nine-tiered heavens by the Imperial Preceptor, and his fate is unknown. As for the 11 sacred generals, other than me, all of them have died." Hearing this, that old man from the plains felt a pain in his heart, and he almost fainted. Many other experts from the plains also opened their mouths wide, wearing expressions of despair and breaking down. The countenance of the Changza Sword Sect's Charles turned pale, as if he did not dare to believe everything before his eyes. Chapter 877. Tyrant grinned. "Are you done listening? Then you can go and die as well." At the next moment, Fang Xingjian grabbed a cross space and split the old man's body into two. The upper half of the old man's body was crushed into a meatball and stuffed into his mouth, while the lower half of the old man's body fell onto the ground in a bloody mess. At the sight of Tyrant's brutal actions, the ferocity of the experts from the plains was immediately stimulated. They let out furious bellows and charged out toward Tyrant. "Let's fight it out with him. Take revenge for his highness." Several tens of warriors from the plains let out furious bellows and charged out toward Tyrant while bringing along all sorts of flames, thunderbolts, and strong gales. These warriors under the Heavenly Lion King were extremely loyal to their king. When they received the news that the Heavenly Lion King's fate was unknown, they all had the thought of dying together with the enemy and following their king. Looking at the several tens of warriors from the plains who were not afraid of death, Tyrant laughed out loud, exuding an overwhelming perilous aura. He opened his mouth and spat out a large lump of gray air currents, which turned into a tempest that swept out. In the blink of an eye, blood flowed like a river, and the several tens of warriors were minced into minced meat without being able to resist at all. Seeing how brutal Tyrant was, the remaining expert from the plains and those who had surrendered did not dare to resist. All of them lowered their heads, not daring to meet Tyrant's gaze. Charles let out a sigh, and the news he had just heard from Prince Wuxian's mouth kept on echoing in his mind. He killed 10 sacred generals single-handedly and forced the Heavenly Lion King to barge into the nine-tiered heavens. The Sacred Fire Order's patriarch and female saint are probably dead as well. Sigh, I didn't expect Fang Xingjian to be able to do this. I've really made the wrong choice in surrendering this time around. At the thought of this, a hint of regret flashed in Charles's gaze. At the same time, the people in the surroundings were also pondering over the contents of the news. But no matter what, They all understood that as this news swept through the world, Feng Xingjian's reputation would soar like the sun in the sky. There would no longer be anyone or any power in the southwest that could oppose him. Similar scenes also happened in the other regions that had been conquered by the plains. This time around, Tyrant, Prince Zhuoxian, the Blue Sacred Moonlight, the Astral Ancestor, and the Sacred Fire Order's Patriarch were all sent out to liberate the regions and take in the experts from the plains and deserts. As the days passed, the news of Feng Xingjian's battle in the imperial capital spread throughout the world. At first, most people expressed disbelief. They simply could not accept such shocking news. However, as more and more news came, everyone, including the 100 races of the plains who were the most reluctant to believe it, had no choice but to accept the truth before their eyes. From this moment onwards, the name of Feng Xingjian had become an unstoppable force in the southwest. Countless people revered his power, revered his sword arts, and were in awe of his remarkable abilities. However, Feng Xingjian could no longer be bothered with all these. His actual body was cultivating the superior, heaven-connecting sword physique on the sun. His 4 divine swords continued to improve amidst the sun's true flames, and his conjured physique was slowly changing its most intrinsic structure. Feng Xingjian's clone kept watch over the imperial capital, making use of the empire's resources to cultivate. He used the thunder-inducing technique as his body, countless heavenly and earthly treasures, and the world's ether particles as the source, slowly strengthening the power of his martial will. 3 days later, in a secret chamber in the empire's palace, the 4th prince reported something to Feng Xingjian. The 4 regions were in turmoil. Due to the plains invasion to the south, the Sand Country's invasion to the east, and Buluo City's defeat, countless knights and conferred knights had chosen to surrender during this period of time. According to the country's laws, those who surrendered during a war would naturally be severely punished. The lightest punishment would be crippling their cultivation, while the more severe punishment would be killing them. However, there were far too many people who had surrendered this time around. When there were too many people, there would often be a trend where the law would not punish the masses. Hearing the 4th prince's question, Feng Xingjian said calmly, "Let Tyrant go." "You're saying those who should be killed, those who should be locked up, and those who should be locked up. There's no need for so many factions in the empire." Therefore, from the next day onward, Tyrant swept through the regions of the 4 regions, bringing forth a reign of terror. Within a short period of time, countless influential clans and top-notch factions were completely massacred by Tyrant. As for the empire's plan to wipe out the factions, it caused a huge commotion in the country. In fact, ever since Alexander's time, the empire had been working hard to weaken the influence of the various factions. They had even started to destroy the legacies of the various factions bit by bit. After all, no emperor would be able to tolerate so many forces within their territory that were not under their control. However, back then, when the 10 great experts had been established and the world's metamorphosis had yet to arrive, Alexander had taken things slowly. He had slowly used the knight system, the regional, and national academies to snatch students and reduce the influence of the factions. However, right now, Feng Xingjian had 6 divine-level experts under him, and he himself had won a great victory in the imperial capital. There was no one in the country who would be able to stop him. There were only 2 paths before the various factions. They could either join the empire or be wiped out. Within a short period of time, there was a reign of terror in the empire. Many factions were unwilling to see the foundations of their ancestors destroyed and rose up in resistance, swearing to defend their own factions. In the eyes of countless factions, Tyrant had become the murderer and executioner. Many descendants of the factions who had escaped worked hard in martial arts, waiting to take revenge. As for Feng Xingjian, he had become a great demon in their eyes. However, under the suppression of the 6 divine-level experts, as well as the Mage Association support in the dark, not a single faction could succeed. The immortal child also seemed to have proven the effects of the mystical prince and sent people to make various transactions with Feng Xingjian. Just the second level of the mystical prince had allowed the other party to provide him with 12 divine remains equipment and countless other precious treasures. He displayed the wealth of the holy sea of truth. All of the divine remains equipment were handed over to Feng Qian, and Feng Xingjian also gave them a portion of the wordless monuments knowledge he had obtained from Earth, asking them to forge the final instant sword for Feng Xingjian. On Feng Xingjian's side, after over 1 month of cultivation, he finally achieved initial success in the heaven-connecting upper extremity sword physique, and the thunder-inducing technique's cultivation speed also gradually decreased. It's time to strive for Tier 5 of the divine level. Feng Xingjian raised his head and looked toward the sky. His indifferent gaze seemed to pass through layers of space and arrive in the 9-tiered heavens. However, he did not leave the mortal world immediately and begin his attempt. Instead, he anxiously informed his many subordinates and announced that he was going to enter seclusion to cultivate. Then he slowly dissipated under everyone's respectful gazes. His actual body, which was on Earth's sun, appeared in the sky above the imperial capital. Feng Xingjian's 2 bodies instantly merged together, and the 4 divine swords darted into his body with a flash. Another intense change in space-time took place. Countless changes in space-time flashed before Feng Xingjian's eyes. However, right now, Feng Xingjian was not as ignorant as he had been in the past. Instead, he looked at the changes in space-time around him, occasionally revealing a hint of contemplation in his eyes. Even after the space-time changes stopped, he was still immersed in his thoughts. It was only a few minutes later that he started to size up his surroundings. This time around, he was not sent to outer space directly. However, what he saw was a vast expanse of land with countless tall buildings collapsing. What appeared before him was a scene of the end of the world. Chapter 878. Looking at the scene that was like the end of the world, Feng Xingjian's gaze flickered a little. Feng Xingjian's body floated up slowly and stood several hundred meters in void space. Streams of martial wool waves swept out in all directions as he observed the situation in this city. As far as the eye could see, there were broken walls and ruins everywhere. Towering buildings that were hundreds of meters tall had collapsed on the ground. The entire city was quiet, as if there were no humans around. Is this a war or a natural disaster? Feng Xingjian's gaze changed a little, and he sank into his sudden inspiration. He started to sense what he needed to do in order to clear the trial in this parallel world he had come to. Almost at the instant he entered the sudden inspiration, an intense killing intent slowly extended out from his body. The seething killing intent was like thick blood plasma, and there seemed to be a pungent smell of blood in the air. The direction where this killing intent was directed was somewhere in the north. Clearly, the content this time around was extremely clear. Feng Xingjian opened his eyes, and a hint of understanding flashed in them. Killing people? I wonder what kind of people they are. However, he was not as unrestrained as Tian Dao, who had charged over to kill people. Although he was an almost invincible existence amongst those of the same level as him. This was only in the miracle world that he was in. Who knew what kind of amazing characters there were in the parallel world? It was just like how Tian Dao had thought that he was invincible amongst those of the same level as him, and had attacked openly. However, he had been killed by Feng Xingjian on the spot. Of course, Feng Xingjian would not make the same arrogant mistake as Tian Dao. Therefore, he descended and returned to the ground. With a single step, he appeared several thousand meters away. After a few steps, he had already left the city. With each step he took, his body would turn into a stream of light. Instead of choosing to fly in the sky in a flashy manner, Feng Xingjian planned to first find a place with people and find out what was going on. On a highway on a vast plain, a van drove toward the horizon in the distance. The driver was a lady in her 20s. She had a mischievous and adorable appearance, and her long eyelashes trembled slightly, highlighting her big eyes that were like sapphires. They were filled with youthful vigor. Apart from her, the dozen or so men and women in the car were all middle-aged, and their eyes were filled with fatigue. Sigh. I didn't expect this insect swarm to separate us from the main group. The female driver of the van sighed. On the other side, a middle-aged man in the passenger seat said, "Once you leave the safe zone, it's already a narrow escape. You should be glad that you're still alive." "So what if I survived?" A middle-aged woman in the back row looked at her own palm. Her palm was full of wrinkles and was somewhat withered. There were even faint streaks on it, causing her heart to ache. "It's been 15 days. If we still can't find a safe zone." At this point, tears fell from her eyes. She was clearly a middle-aged woman, but at this moment, she was crying like a little girl. The middle-aged man sighed and patted the woman's shoulder, but he couldn't say anything to comfort her. After all, living in this era, even his heart was filled with despair. How could he comfort the woman in front of him? Another middle-aged man with black-rimmed glasses said, "Don't worry. The direction shouldn't be wrong. As long as we find a safe zone this time around, we won't need to migrate for a very long period of time." Just then, a person in the back row shouted, "Quick, look! Who's that?" At the end of the horizon, a man stood in midair. He only had a black robe draped over his shoulders, which fluttered in the wind. His long black hair danced crazily in the strong gales like flames. In less than a minute after Feng Xingjian had disappeared, 7 streams of light traversed across the sky and descended in the sky above the city that had turned into ruins. An old man with white hair and a long beard that reached his feet frowned and said, "He's already left?" Another beautiful young married lady with a seductive figure and long purple hair smiled and said, "It seems that this person is very cautious. He's not like some people who came with great fanfare, but were almost beaten to death by the divine emperor." Hearing the beautiful young married lady's words, a man with a cold expression, a skinny figure, and snake-like pupils let out a cold snort and said, "Zixing, don't think that I don't dare to beat you to death." The young married lady, who was called Zixing, laughed. "Ha ha ha, Snake King, you still can't change your arrogant personality. I'm really curious how someone like you managed to survive until now and even reach Tier 4 of the divine level. Aren't you too lucky?" Enough. Seeing that the two of them were still going to argue, the white-bearded old man let out a soft snort and stopped their dispute. He seemed to be very awe-inspiring among the crowd. With a single command, everyone present fell silent. Looking at the traces in the surroundings, the old man said, "It seems that this companion of ours is really very careful. He didn't leave behind any traces." The cold and gloomy Snake King said calmly, "For him to be so careful, he probably can't be that strong. The Divine Emperor's army is getting more and more terrifying. Their latest creation is a robot known as the Face Masker. It's already able to pose a direct threat to us." Hearing the Snake King's words, everyone's hearts sank. Ever since they arrived in this world one after another, they had been living in the Divine Emperor's shadow. Through the many battles, their battle results had gotten increasingly worse. It was because the people on their side were unable to attain a breakthrough to the 9-tiered heavens, and their growth in strength was very slow. Meanwhile, the weapons of the Divine Emperor's army were getting increasingly stronger. As a result, they were in an even more difficult situation. At this moment, no one seemed to be concerned about the newcomer situation. Only the white-haired old man sighed and said, "After everyone returns to the safety zone, make good use of your time to cultivate. Instruct your subordinates to see if you can find that new companion. After you find him, do your best to protect him and not let him be killed by the Divine Emperor. At this juncture, any additional battle prowess is a good thing. It probably won't be long before the final battle arrives." At the next moment, the 7 streams of light dissipated one by one, and the entire city once again regained its tranquility. It was as if no one had ever come to these ruins. On the other side, with a flash, Feng Xingjian appeared in the van. "Ah!" With a sharp cry, the van driven by the female driver skidded and flipped sideways. However, with a slight clench of Feng Xingjian's palm, the van, which was about to fly out horizontally, stopped in midair. Looking at the terrified gazes of the surrounding men and women, Feng Xingjian said calmly, "I have some questions to ask you guys. How much do you know about the current situation in this world?" The female driver looked at Fang Xingjian with both fear and anticipation and said, "Are you a cultivator from the Qiu Dao Alliance?" Chapter 879. Fang Xingjian's brows furrowed slightly. What is the Qiu Dao Alliance? At the next moment, his gaze swept past the other party's body with some doubt, and he suddenly asked, "How old are you this year?" "Ha!" The young lady let out a bitter laugh and said, "My name is Ali. I should only be 10 years old this year." Therefore, as the group of people explained, Fang Xingjian finally gained some understanding of the world before him. This world was just as he had predicted. It was indeed a parallel world to Earth. In the past, this world had been very close to Earth. The countries, cultures, and histories on this world had a lot of similarities with Earth's. However, the turning point occurred 10 years ago. 10 years ago, a calamity known as the First Onslaught was born. A myriad of golden light encompassed the entire planet. The golden light was like the glow of the gods. Other than a faint warmth, it did not bring about any negative feelings. Countless religions announced that it was a blessing from the gods, and many commoners were curious about the golden light. Within 3 days, countless religious believers were born in the world. However, what the people did not know was that it was just the beginning of a nightmare. As the golden light disappeared 3 days later, Earth returned to its original trajectory, and the entire society seemed to continue operating according to the previous plan. However, people soon discovered that something was wrong. Some people's hair turned white overnight, and some children discovered that they had grown over 10 centimeters taller after a night's sleep. Countless old men and women died a few days later, and countless young men and women became middle-aged men and women after 10 days or so. Their parents started to enter old age. A large number of living creatures started to die. Regardless of whether it was on the streets, in the forests, on the plains, or in the deep seas, there were large areas of dead animal corpses everywhere. People discovered to their horror that ever since the golden light disappeared, the time of all the living creatures on Earth seemed to have been adjusted faster. All the living creatures were witnessing the passing of their lives at the rate of 1 year per day. Within a short 1 month, over 2 billion humans had died. The entire Earth seemed to have turned into hell, and the entire country's government was on the verge of collapse. However, there was always a way out. After paying the price of over 90% of the population, people discovered the existence of safe zones. This meant that there would be some regions of varying sizes across the entire planet. The living creatures in these regions would not be affected by the accelerated lifespans. The appearance and disappearance of these areas were almost completely random, but humans still managed to find some patterns in their explorations. First of all, almost all of these areas lasted for more than a year. The longest one lasted for 5 years before disappearing. Secondly, a layer of faint golden radiance would appear on the ground where these regions were located. Thanks to the discovery of the safe zone, humans managed to survive and were not completely wiped out in the first impact. But even so, humans were still in a difficult situation. Because of the death of a large number of animals in the world, it made it difficult for humans to obtain food. The existence of the safe zone not only protected humans, but also restricted their movements. Fang Xingjian nodded. He had some understanding of the current situation. However, he felt that he was not affected by the so-called accelerated lifespan at all. He could not help but think, is it because I came from a parallel world? Or was it immunity to black magic? Is the golden light related to the metal demonic god? Ever since he got to know the information about the evil gods from the Black Mage King, Fang Xingjian had a deep understanding of how powerful the evil gods, or rather, the demonic gods, were. Their existences were unimaginable, their true forms were indescribable, and their powers were endless. It was not impossible for those demonic gods to be the ones who created this natural disaster. Fang Xingjian suddenly asked, "Why is it called the first impact? Since it's the first time, will there be a second time? A third time? Who said this?" A hint of confusion appeared on Ali's face. She shook her head and said, "I don't know either. That's what others told me too." "Then what influences are there in this world right now?" Where are you guys planning to go? Looking at the anxious looks on the men and women's faces, Feng Xingjian suddenly realized that this Earth was different from the one he had come from. On this planet, as long as they were not in the safe zone, everyone's time was extremely precious. It was no wonder that these men and women would feel anxious if they were to stop here and talk to him slowly. In fact, if it was not because Feng Xingjian's sudden appearance and the van floating in the air were too astonishing, this group of men and women would have ignored him a long time ago. Therefore, with a turn of Feng Xingjian's palm, the van once again landed on the ground. Feng Xingjian said, "Let's talk as we drive." Ali broke into a relaxed expression. "Thank you. We're going to Litian City. It's a very large, safe zone, and it's also the Qiu Dao Alliance's territory. The security there is very tight." "Oh, what kind of organization is this Qiu Dao Alliance?" Through the descriptions of the few men and women, the outline of the Qiu Dao Alliance gradually appeared before Feng Xingjian. This was an influence that a man called Qiu Dao had founded. According to Ali, this person called Qiu Dao had remarkable abilities that could overturn rivers and seas and uproot mountains. He had single-handedly built a city, solved the problems of food, climate, and other human survival problems, and built the Qiu Dao Alliance's first city. Under Qiu Dao, there were 6 other men and women who were known as the 6 Heavenly Generals. All of them were people who could take on countries single-handedly and had remarkable abilities. Li said proudly, all of the 6 Heavenly Generals have the power to annihilate the world. They can destroy an entire country single-handedly and are almost invincible existences in the human world. Feng Xingjian smiled and said, "It's true that they can destroy an entire country single-handedly. However, that might not necessarily be the case if they're almost invincible." He already had a vague judgment in his heart. He had some guesses about the identities of the Qiu Dao Alliance and the 6 Heavenly Generals. Hearing Feng Xingjian's words, Ali felt as if her idol had been insulted. She let out a cold snort and said, "I can tell that you've learned some martial arts as well. However, don't think that you can compete with the 6 Heavenly Generals with your superficial skills. Any one of them is 100 or even 1,000 times stronger than you." Feng Xingjian smiled and could not be bothered to rebut her. He just continued to ask her about the current situation in the world. According to their descriptions, they were currently in the new country on Feng Xingjian's Earth. Almost all of the land was controlled by the Qiu Dao Alliance. This organization had built a huge country in East Asia with the 6 Heavenly Generals and the 7 cities that Qiu Dao was in as the center. Over 100 safe zones of various sizes had been taken over by them. They had built schools, hospitals, organized armies, and even taught martial arts in these areas. They had become the absolute rulers of this land. Chapter 880. The young lady, Ali, and the middle-aged men and women had originally been in a safe zone that belonged to the Qiu Dao Alliance. However, the sudden bug horde had destroyed the defenses of the safe zone, and they had no choice but to escape and head toward Litian City. At the mention of the bug horde, Ali's face once again revealed a hint of horror. Due to the first onslaught, most of the animals outside the safe zone have gone extinct. Only some of them are kept in the safe zone, and some of them have gotten used to the new estrus period and reproduction speed. However, bugs are able to reproduce incessantly for 24 hours straight. With the acceleration of their lifespans, their growth speed is even faster, and their reproduction speed has also increased tremendously. This has formed a terrifying bug horde. Feng Xingjian nodded. He more or less understood the current situation in East Asia. However, when he asked about the situation in the other zones, Ali appeared to be at a loss and did not understand much. In fact, with her status, what she had said earlier was merely the content that the Qiu Dao Alliance had been promoting for many years. There was probably still a gap between her understanding of what the world really looked like. However, the historical development of this world made Feng Xingjian sense many special things. Firstly, the situation of the first onslaught had given him a deeper understanding of this natural disaster. The experts in Miracle World had once said that the onslaught was a phenomenon that was hard to explain. They only knew that the source of the onslaught was likely to be from the 12 demonic gods. However, the phenomenon itself was hard to understand and could not be stopped. The invasion of some special species was considered easy to understand. However, the phenomenon of lifespans being accelerated could only be accepted passively. There was also the existence of the Qiu Dao Alliance. I still have to take a look at this Qiu Dao Alliance and see if it's what I think it is. At the thought of this, Fang Xingjian turned to look at the few men and women and said, "Which direction is the Litian city that you guys are talking about?" "In the northwest." A middle-aged man wearing black-rimmed glasses said, "Do you want to go with us? Only in the safe zone will you be able to recover the loss of your lifespan. Otherwise, no matter how strong you are, you won't be able to survive in the wilderness for long periods of time." Fang Xingjian smiled and didn't say anything. He just raised his hand, and with a gentle vibration, the entire van flew up and flew in the northwest direction, causing everyone present to exclaim in surprise. At this moment, the way they looked at Fang Xingjian was different. To be able to roll up a van and fly, he was definitely not an ordinary martial artist. They had never even heard of humans other than the heavenly generals being able to do such a thing. Fang Xingjian propelled the van with his martial will, and there was no need to mention its speed. Under the guidance of the few men and women, they arrived outside Litian City a few minutes later. The van floated hundreds of meters in the air. The group of people leaned against the window and looked at the huge city several kilometers away. Their faces were filled with surprise. "We're here. Over there. So many people." A short moment later, the van trembled slightly, and Fang Xingjian placed it on the ground. The group of men and women lifted their heads to look, but there were no signs of Fang Xingjian. Right now, Fang Xingjian was walking on the streets of Litian City. With his current cultivation, as long as he was not willing to, it was impossible for ordinary people to detect his presence. He walked on the streets as if there was no one around him, and the people in the surroundings did not seem to have seen him. Some people even passed through Fang Xingjian's body, as if Fang Xingjian did not exist at all. The Litian city before them was roughly a quarter of the size of Demonic City. All of the buildings and streets were built together, and they looked almost identical. Even though the people on the streets were a little skinny, they were full of vigor, and there was not the slightest hint of weakness in their eyes. Other than these, what Fang Xingjian was most concerned about was the martial arts centers in the city. When he arrived at the martial arts centers and saw the few young men who were cultivating, a hint of understanding flashed in his eyes. As expected, there were ether particles in these cultivators' bodies. Ever since Fang Xingjian came to this earth, he had already discovered that this world was also filled with ether particles. It was just that he had not discovered it in little Tanuki's and the others' bodies earlier. It seemed that this world's past was a little different from what he had imagined. Extraordinary powers were not very common, and most humans probably did not have a night system. Only humans like him, who were cultivating in martial arts, will be able to gradually absorb ether particles and develop a night system. Just as Fang Xingjian was thinking about these, a voice suddenly rang out in his mind. "Friend, since you're here, aren't you going to greet me?" Fang Xingjian turned his head slightly and saw that a young man with long red hair, who was dressed in embroidered robes, had appeared before him. Fang Xingjian was not too surprised by the other party's appearance. After all, he had not been able to hide himself. It was just that ordinary people would not be able to detect him when he walked through spatial gaps. However, to those who were strong enough, he would be very obvious. Fang Xingjian's marshal will scan the other party's body, and a hint of understanding flashed in his heart. As expected, "You're a divine level expert." After hearing the description of the Qiu Dao Alliance, the Alliance Chief Qiu Dao, and the 6 heavenly generals under him, Fang Xingjian had already guessed that the other party might have already reached the divine level. Right now, he could tell that the other party was not just an ordinary divine level expert. He had already attained a conjured physique and was in existence that was at least at tier 3 of the divine level or above. That red-haired young man saw Fang Xingjian's curious gaze and said, "You also came from another parallel world, right?" The red-haired young man smiled bitterly and said, "It's the same for us." A hint of astonishment flashed in Feng Xingjian's eyes as he asked, "The nine-tiered heavens? The nine-tiered heavens, the gates of heaven, the nine-tiered thunder tribulation, or whatever it is. In any case, we all came from a similar place and came to this world in the process of clearing the trials," the red-haired young man said, smiling bitterly. The red-haired youth bitterly smiled and said, "But you're really unlucky to have come to this world." Feng Xingjian asked curiously, "Oh, could it be that the 6 heavenly generals and the alliance chief all came from a parallel world?" "That's right. Lord Xiao Dao was the first among us to arrive in this world. It's a pity that after him, none of us have been able to complete our missions and clear this trial. Instead, more and more Tier 4 divine level experts have come to this world." The red-haired young man shook his head, looked at Feng Xingjian, and said, "Thankfully, you met me. I came last year, and there shouldn't be much of a difference in our strength. It's also easier for us to interact. The few people who came earlier have unfathomable strength and aren't easy to talk to. If you were to encounter them, you'd probably be used to establish your might and taught a lesson." Chapter 881. Those few people are very powerful? Feng Xingjian asked. "You should know that those at Tier 1 of the divine level and above require the 9-tiered heavens in order to level up. Therefore, most of the divine level experts will be able to reach Tier 4 of the divine level within a few years, or even a few months. There are very few people who can stay at the same level for very long." The red-haired young man persuaded, "Don't feel indignant. They cleared the trials earlier than us, so it's only natural that they've accumulated more power than us. Moreover, although the cultivation conditions in this world aren't that great, the research and technology isn't weak. Each of them has been at Tier 4 of the divine level for a very long time, and each of their cultivations is getting more unfathomable than the other. Although their strength hasn't increased by much, they've already far surpassed us in terms of the microscopic realm." Feng Xingjian did not comment on this and merely asked, "Then why haven't you guys been able to clear the trials?" The red-haired young man sighed once again, and his face was filled with bitterness. He shook his head and did not answer Feng Xingjian's question. Instead, he said, "My name is Luo Haonan. I haven't asked what your name is." "My name is Feng Xingjian." Xingjian. Luo Haonan had clearly not had anyone to confide in for too long. After all, the difference between him and the natives on this planet was too great. He had no desire to confide in them at all. As for the other divine level experts, they had come much earlier than him and each had their own circles. Moreover, he had been taught a few lessons by them previously, so he was a little afraid of those seniors. Now that he saw Feng Xingjian coming over, he naturally felt like a big brother. Therefore, he came over to greet him and started to pour out his grievances. "It's all because of the natives in this world," Luo Haonan said. Luo Haonan said, "Although the natives of this world aren't very strong individually, they have mastered very advanced technology. This was especially the case 12 years ago, 2 years before the first onslaught. A man who called himself the Divine Emperor appeared on this planet and brought with him a tremendous amount of high technology. Our mission, which is the condition for this world to clear the trials, is to guide the direction of history's development and change history. We want to turn the entire Earth into a cultivation civilization. However, the existence of the Divine Emperor has become the greatest obstacle. As long as he is around, this planet will never be a pure cultivation civilization." Feng Xingjian came to a realization. After coming to this world, the target he had to kill with his sudden inspiration was probably that God Emperor. Moreover, even the 7 Tier 4 divine level experts from the Qiudao Alliance were unable to do anything to that Divine Emperor. Clearly, this Divine Emperor had some kind of powerful power. Luo Haonan continued. "It's unknown where that Divine Emperor got his hands on such high technology. The mechanical army under him is almost endless. There are even small space battleships. Also, you know that Earth has been hit by the first impact. Now, the lifespan of all living things on the entire planet will increase. Staying outside the safe zone for a day will cost you 1 year of your lifespan. It's not worth it to fight against his mechanical army outside. Fang Xingjian understood. It seemed that these divine-level experts from other parallel worlds were not immune to the accelerated depletion of their lifespans. It seemed that the environment here was one of his advantages. However, Fang Xingjian was still a little puzzled. Tier 4 divine-level experts are already able to move at light speed and even distort space. After entering the microscopic realm, they will have all sorts of miraculous effects. Are they still unable to do anything to him? Luo Haonan shook his head. You'll know when the time comes. However, there's something I can tell you. Qiu Dao is only the first among the 7 of us to come to this world. He's not the first divine-level expert on this planet to come to this world. Before him, after the first onslaught, there was a divine-level expert who came to this world. However, saying this, Luo Haonan's gaze became extremely solemn. He was killed by the Divine Emperor. Fang Xingjian nodded and said, Then what plans do you guys have from now on? If we were to continue dragging this out and stay here, we'll probably never be able to attain a breakthrough to Tier 5 of the Divine level. If the Divine Emperor were to continue researching more high-technology equipment, he'd probably get increasingly stronger. Isn't that so? Luo Haonan shrugged. But Lord Qiu Dao seems to have his own plans as well. People like us who are weaker can only wait for them. Fang Xingjian was naturally unwilling to wait for other people's plans. He did not have the time to wait here for 7 or 8 years. However, the situation was unclear, and it was impossible for him to just go up and kill people. Therefore, with a slight movement, a clone withdrew from his body, preparing to gather information on the Qiu Dao alliance and that divine emperor. Under the intentional concealment of Fang Xingjian's illusory arts, Luo Haonan was unable to discover this change in Fang Xingjian. Therefore, over the next few days, Fang Xingjian stayed in Litian City. There was no news from Qiu Dao and the other 5 heavenly generals. It was as if they did not place much importance on Fang Xingjian, who was a new divine-level expert. Therefore, Fang Xingjian's clone continued to gather information on this world. Fang Xingjian's actual body would occasionally discuss the path of cultivation and the profoundness of martial arts with Luo Haonan. They would also occasionally exchange information about the different parallel universes they were in. The parallel world that Luo Haonan was in was also a place similar to Earth. However, the martial arts there was extremely strong. There were also mages and the Holy Sea of Truth there. However, the mages were completely suppressed by the church, and there was almost no way for them to make a name for themselves. Under Fang Xingjian's probing, the other party's world did not seem to be connected to Miracle World. However, Earth itself already had the 9-tiered heavens. Moreover, the other party's understanding of many of the world's secrets was above that of Fang Xingjian's. The 9-tiered heavens is projected to other worlds, changing the history, past, and future of other worlds. Fang Xingjian asked, I wonder what Brother Luo's goal is. Countless parallel worlds are connected and changing each other. Luo Haonan grinned and said, It said that these are the means of the 13 demonic gods. Oh, the 13 demonic gods are the supreme existences in the countless parallel universes. They're the ones who intertwine the timelines that originally didn't interfere with each other. Luo Haonan sighed and said, But this is just the beginning. I wonder if you've heard of the Ring of Time. It said that the reason why countless universes are connected by these powerful existences is because they want to set up an extremely massive ring of time to fight. More and more worlds are connected together. Once they become the Ring of Time, these worlds and the living creatures in them will enter an endless cycle and be completely sealed up. However, it's clear that these powerful existences are not of one mind. Each world is like a chess piece, and the entire game is like a game of Go. After the countless worlds are connected and the Ring of Time is activated, it's as if one of the chess pieces has been eaten up. These powerful existences keep on changing the past and future on this chessboard of the multivariate universes, connecting different universes, and by changing the timelines and activating the Ring of Time. They seal each other's powers. Luo Haonan then smiled. However, these are all legends. He, using the endless timelines as chess pieces, the endless universes as the chessboard, and using the means to change the past and future. If such a war were to really happen, it would be recorded over several 10,000 years. It wouldn't have much to do with us, so it's useless to think about it. Chapter 882. Fang Xingjian nodded in agreement to what Luo Haonan had said about the 13 demonic gods. On one hand, it was because these matters were too far away from them. The powers of the legendary demonic gods were too vast, and it was impossible for Fang Xingjian and the others to change what they wanted to do. On the other hand, Luo Haonan's level was too different from theirs, and the information he had was just a one-sided story. The accuracy might not even be 50%. Other than exchanging secrets, chatting about miscellaneous topics, and the differences between the two worlds, Fang Xingjian still enjoyed exchanging knowledge about the microscopic realm with Luo Haonan the most. Fang Xingjian raised his hand, and a spot of sword light rose up from his fingertip. At the next moment, the sword light dissipated, and countless light spots rose up, condensing into a small silver sword in void space. What do you think of this move of mine, Brother Luo? Luo Haonan threw a careful glance at the small silver sword and said with a smile, "Material creation. Brother Fang is really good. From this move, I can tell that Brother Fang is already very familiar with the grasp of material properties in the microscopic realm. It's a pity that this method of creation is just a validation of one's realm. It doesn't have much prowess when facing enemies." Fang Xingjian said calmly, "I heard that above Tier 6 of the divine level, one can enter the impeccable realm from the microscopic realm, allowing one to control space-time and truly have the means to create things from void space. With just a raise of one's hand, all living things will be born and destroyed." That's right. The impeccable realm is really a qualitative change. After stepping into Tier 6 of the divine level, one will be able to survive even if the world collapses and planets are destroyed, Luo Haonan said. However, the microscopic realm might not be that much weaker than the impeccable realm in terms of destructive force alone. With that, Luo Haonan tapped out, and faint ripples swept through the small silver sword. The entire sword instantly collapsed, turning into a ball of light spots that shot out in all directions. Interesting. Fang Xingjian smiled and said, "Brother Luo's path of annihilation turns material properties into light spots. It's true that in terms of destruction, it's not much weaker than the impeccable realm." During this period of time, Fang Xingjian had been exchanging martial arts with Luo Haonan and realized that what Luo Haonan had said earlier was right. These Tier 4 divine level experts in this world had been unable to reach Tier 5 of the divine level for a long time. Therefore, in order to increase their battle prowess, they put more effort into exploring the microscopic realm. Their martial wills might not be comparable to that of a Tier 5 divine level expert, but due to their great attainments in the microscopic realm, their battle prowess would not be inferior in the slightest. In Fang Xingjian's opinion, Luo Haonan was not much weaker than Alexander. The few heavenly generals, as well as the Qiu Dao Alliance's sect master, Qiu Dao, were probably stronger than Alexander or even the heavenly Lion King. As for the God Emperor who could suppress them to the point where they could not retaliate, his abilities were naturally even more terrifying. Luo Haonan sighed and said, "Our generation of cultivators has many accomplishments in the field of destruction. Our understanding of matter in the microscopic realm is enough to destroy all living things. However, only by rising to Tier 6 of the divine level and stepping into the path of impeccable will one be able to rise from destruction and be impervious to all arts." After chatting for a while, Luo Haonan suddenly smiled and said, "Brother Fang accepted a female disciple a few days ago. Why don't you take a look at her for me?" "Oh, Brother Luo is still in the mood to take in disciples in this world?" Fang Xingjian was a little surprised. He knew that it was true that the Chiodao Alliance had opened martial arts dojos and imparted martial arts. However, they were only used for security and to defend against wild beasts, ensuring the population of this world so that they could complete their breakthrough. That was to guide and change history. Otherwise, if everyone were to die, what kind of history would there be? Moreover, the natives of this world almost did not have a night system. If they were to hope for them to start from scratch, cultivate bit by bit, or even reach the divine level and then help them fight against the divine emperor, it would probably take countless years. Moreover, this world did not have the 9-tiered heavens yet. They would only be able to reach tier 1 of the divine level at most. What use would they be? Luo Haonan sighed and said, I have no other choice. The Blazing Sun Dao Palace I'm in has always only had one disciple in each generation. In my generation, I still haven't taken in any disciples. I thought that I was a great talent and that reaching tier 5 of the divine level was a sure thing. I wanted to fully focus on cultivating and only taking disciples after reaching tier 5 of the divine level before striving for tier 6 of the divine level. I didn't expect that I would be trapped in this world. Now that the divine emperor is very powerful, I'll have to make early arrangements. As they spoke, a young lady with short hair and a pair of large eyes that were as charming as sapphires walked in. She was dressed in a t-shirt and long pants. Luo Haonan said, Haha, Brother Fong, this is my new disciple, Ali. Ali, this is Master's friend. You can address him as Martial Uncle. The young lady, Ali, was the female driver who was 10 years old mentally, but 20 years old physically. She was also the one who had sent them to Litian City by Fong Xingjian. Ali looked at Fong Xingjian in astonishment, as if she had not expected that this unfamiliar man would be on equal footing with a heavenly general. However, since Luo Haonan had given the instructions, she naturally did not dare to have any objections. After all, it was really heaven-defying luck to be able to get a heavenly general as her master in this era. She bowed respectfully and said, Martial Uncle. Fong Xingjian smiled and looked at Luo Haonan, saying through information currents, his foundation isn't strong enough, and there are almost no ether particles in his body. However, he is very intelligent, and the frequency of his brain waves is very high. Luo Haonan nodded and replied, That's true. Right now, the cultivation environment in this world isn't complete and can't be compared to our world. I don't have high hopes for him to have great achievements either. I only hope that he can be more intelligent and intelligent, so that he can survive and pass down our sect's martial arts. As he spoke, Luo Haonan's eyes were filled with deep worry. He clearly did not think very well of the situation. This was also the reason why he had started to choose a successor and pass down his martial arts. As for introducing Fong Xingjian to Ali, it also had the intention of entrusting him to her. He hoped that if he were to die in battle, Fong Xingjian would be able to take care of Ali. A few days later, as Fong Xingjian was cultivating in the house, the surface of his body instantly turned into a silver color. His skin was like a layer of silver mirror, perfectly reflecting everything in the surroundings of the room. It looked extremely similar to the impasse armor on Earth. It was the complete form of the heaven-connecting upper extremity sword physique that Fong Xingjian had cultivated. During the final tempering on the sun, he had finally cultivated this conjured physique that he had created. However, while the current heaven-connecting upper extremity sword physique had many advantages, it was not as though it did not have any disadvantages. In terms of advantages, he could naturally rely on the heaven-connecting upper extremity sword physique. The surface of his body would reflect almost all electromagnetic waves, and even Martial would not be able to take effect on him. Its toughness was comparable to that of a neutron star, and its surface was purely formed from a layer of dense, atomic nuclei pressed together. There was probably no matter in the natural world that could break through his defense. However, where there were advantages, there would naturally be disadvantages as well. In order to maintain the complete form of the heaven-connecting upper extremity sword physique, one would need to maintain a special force field. The depletion of energy was very great. Even Fang Xingjian would not be able to maintain it forever. Moreover, when he was maintaining this ultimate defense, he would not be able to move at light speed anymore. After all, during the process of reassembling, it would be equivalent to him breaking through his conjured physique. Of course, the defense of Fang Xingjian's conjured physique in its normal state had also increased tremendously. It was the normal form of the heaven-connecting upper extremity sword physique. As for the complete form of the heaven-connecting upper extremity sword physique, it could be used as a trump card. Chapter 883. At the next moment, the silver color on Fang Xingjian's body faded away, and he once again took on the appearance of an ordinary human. Fang Xingjian's sudden inspiration trembled slightly. Then, with a step, he arrived at the small courtyard outside the door. At the same time he appeared, Ali also happened to step into the courtyard. Looking at Fang Xingjian in astonishment, Ali asked curiously, "Martial uncle, are you as powerful as master?" Ali was naturally very respectful toward her master, Luo Haonan. After all, the reputation of the Qiu Dao Alliance's 6 heavenly generals was known throughout the world. Everyone, old and weak, knew of him. However, as for Fang Xingjian, perhaps because they had had a long conversation earlier, Fang Xingjian did not display any astonishing abilities other than moving the car. Ali appeared to be more casual. The corners of Fang Xingjian's lips curled up slightly as he said, half-jokingly, "The 6 heavenly generals combined shouldn't be as powerful as me. It's just that Alliance Chief Qiu Dao has some trump cards that I haven't figured out yet." This was also the information that his clones had found out over the past few days. However, when Ali heard this, she felt that Fang Xingjian was spouting nonsense. Simultaneously, a young man walked in from outside, looking at Fang Xingjian with a gaze filled with contempt. He laughed coldly inwardly. He's really boasting shamelessly. How powerful can someone who likes to brag before young ladies be? Master is right. This new heavenly general has been timid and cautious the moment he arrived, and he even likes to brag. He probably isn't very strong. This young man was one of the 6 heavenly generals. He was the disciple of the eerily cold Snake King, and his name was Lu Ying. However, although Lu Ying was criticizing Fang Xingjian in his heart, he would not show any overly disrespectful actions on the surface. After all, Fang Xingjian's abilities far surpassed his. Therefore, Lu Ying cupped his fists and said, "Lord Xingjian, Lord Luo has asked for you to go over. The Alliance Chief has passed down an order." Fang Xingjian nodded, and with a flash, he disappeared. Seeing that Fang Xingjian had disappeared, Lu Ying said, 1 against 6. This guy doesn't even know how to lie." Ali said awkwardly, "Martial uncle might just be joking." "Joking? Not everything can be joked about. Fortunately, I heard it. If my master heard it, he would probably beat him half to death." Ali nodded, but did not dare to retort. It was because Lu Ying's master, the Snake King, had once taught Luo Haonan a lesson, defeated him, and even took away one of his divine remains equipment. Because of this, Luo Haonan's men were always unable to raise their heads in front of the Snake King. Naturally, Ali was also unable to raise her head in front of Lu Ying. Based on Luo Haonan's judgment, Fang Xingjian's abilities were on par with his. Therefore, Fang Xingjian was naturally not a match for the Snake King. Elsewhere, Fang Xingjian had already met up with Luo Haonan. When Fang Xingjian arrived at Luo Haonan's study, he saw that Luo Haonan's brows were furrowed, forming a Chuan character. His face was filled with worry. Of Li, Xingjian said. Xingjian was Fang Xingjian of Fang. Xingjian of. Luo Haonan looked at Fang Xingjian, sighed, and said, "Sigh, there are changes in the north. That divine emperor seems to be up to something again." "Is that so?" Fang Xingjian's gaze flickered. It was true that his clone had gotten some news from the north. On Earth, other than the Qiu Dao Alliance's territory in East Asia, the rest of the world had been taken over by the Divine Emperor. After all, the mechanical armies led by the Divine Emperor were not affected by the accelerated lifespans. Large areas of human cities and resources were left unmanaged after the calamity. Therefore, they were all taken over by the Divine Emperor and engulfed. As a result, the Divine Emperor's strength swelled crazily. However, while the Divine Emperor's strength continued to soar, the people under his rule continued to live like slaves. After all, the Divine Emperor had a multitude of mechanical armies under him. These machines did not need to eat or drink, working hard without any complaints. Their efficiency was much higher than that of humans. They would not complain or ask for compensation, and they were absolutely loyal. Other than some special jobs and a small number of members of the upper echelon, most of the humans under the Divine Emperor were locked up in the commoners' slums in some safety zones. They were living like slaves, eating nutrition paste, and sleeping every day. There was almost no entertainment. However, compared to the Divine Emperor's multitude of mechanical armies, the Divine Emperor himself was the most troublesome. Based on Feng Xingjian's probing, it was very likely that the Divine Emperor had uploaded a part of his thoughts into the mechanical network. This meant that the speed at which the Divine Emperor's reactions and thoughts were transmitted could be even faster than that of divine-level experts. In order to really kill the Divine Emperor would probably need to destroy every single mechanical soldier on Earth, as well as every computer and server of the Divine Emperor. In order to achieve this, the Divine Emperor would definitely need to cooperate with the Qiu Dao Alliance. Otherwise, it was unknown how long Feng Xingjian would need to put in. The more troublesome thing was that Feng Xingjian's clone had recently discovered that the Divine Emperor had started to build spaceships. The Divine Emperor had plans to leave Earth, explore the universe, and colonize other planets. If the Divine Emperor were to succeed, it would be the divine-level experts on Earth who would have a headache. By then, the Divine Emperor's mechanical armies would probably no longer have any reservations. It would not be impossible for him to gather all of Earth's resources or even destroy the entire planet in order to wipe out the Qiu Dao Alliance. In order to guide the parallel world's history, it was impossible for them to not have any reservations. Feng Xingjian deduced inwardly. It seems that Qiu Dao has also discovered the Divine Emperor's abnormalities and is preparing to make a move. Luo Haonan said, "We'll meet up in Qiu Dao City one day later. This time around, they also wish to meet you and discuss the plan to deal with the Divine Emperor." One day later, Feng Xingjian and Luo Haonan soared into the sky. A stream of light flashed behind Luo Haonan, and he headed toward Qiu Dao City together with little Tanuki. At the sight of this scene, Feng Xingjian fell into deep thought. It was no wonder that the other party had arranged to meet up one day later and had not moved at light speed. It was because they had to bring their disciples along. It seemed that the Qiu Dao Alliance's situation this time around was not optimistic. A few of the heavenly generals planned on bringing their disciples and juniors to get to know each other. This could be considered as leaving a way out for them. The three of them crossed the horizon and darted through the clouds, causing a large area of the cloud layers to seethe and rumble like thunder. Although they did not move at akin to light speed, just flying with their martial will was already too fast for the distance within the atmospheric layer. In less than a minute, the three of them arrived at Qiu Dao City. This was a city located at the bottom of the Eastern Sea. The vast space was almost 3 times the size of Litian City. A layer of ocean blue light encompassed the entire city, fending off the pressure from the millions and millions of tons of seawater. Feng Xingjian knew that Qiu Dao had been using a portion of his martial will to prop up the entire city. In fact, if it was not because of the power of a divine-level expert, even if this underwater safe zone was discovered, it would be hard for it to be used. Chapter 884. A densely packed crowd was waiting in the underwater city. Feng Xingjian and Luo Haonan flew across the sky above Qiu Dao City and arrived at a hall in the city center. At the entrance of the hall, over 10 men and women were already waiting there. The Snake King's disciple, Lu Ying, was standing among them. Clearly, these over 10 young men and women were the disciples of the Qiu Dao Alliance's divine-level experts. Seeing that Luo Haonan and Feng Xingjian had descended, many disciples looked at Feng Xingjian with curious gazes. They had heard of this new divine level expert for a long time, but it was their first time meeting Fang Xingjian. A middle-aged man came up to them and introduced himself. "Good afternoon, sirs. I'm Huang Zixing, teacher Qiu Dao's disciple. Teacher and the other 5 sirs have arrived." "Haha, it seems that we're late," Luo Haonan said with a smile. "Zixing, help me take care of my new disciple." He then looked at Ali, who was behind him, and said, "Ali, have a good chat with these senior brothers and sisters of yours." Huang Zixing said, "Sir, don't worry. I'll take good care of Ali." Ali nodded as well, but there was still a hint of nervousness on her face. After all, compared to the other disciples who had been under Luo Haonan's tutelage for a long time, she had only become Luo Haonan's disciple a few days ago. Even her cultivation had just started. After making arrangements for his disciple, Luo Haonan followed Fang Xingjian into the hall. As he walked, he said to Fang Xingjian through information currents, "Brother Fang, when you meet the few seniors later, they might try to test out your means. After all, it'll be easier for them to understand your abilities when they go up against the Divine Emperor in the future." "I understand." Fang Xingjian nodded. "That's what I should do." After hesitating for a moment, Luo Haonan still said, "Qiu Dao is easy to talk to, and most of the other 5 heavenly generals aren't people who would cause trouble. However, I don't know where that Snake King came from. He has an arrogant personality and has always thought that he's the strongest expert under Qiu Dao. He calls himself the Deputy Alliance Chief of the Qiu Dao Alliance. Brother Fang, you'd better be careful." At the thought of the Snake King, Luo Haonan's heart skipped a beat. Back when he had just arrived at the Qiu Dao Alliance, it was the Snake King who had made a move to test Luo Haonan's strength. Luo Haonan was then seriously injured, leaving behind a shadow in his heart. His subordinates could not even raise their heads before the Snake King's subordinates. Fang Xingjian nodded. Although he didn't agree with Luo Haonan's words, Luo Haonan reminded him out of good intentions. Fang Xingjian replied, "Thank you for the reminder, Brother Luo." A few seconds later, an endless darkness appeared in front of the two of them. It was as if there was no light in the hall, and they could not see the space at all. However, the two of them did not hesitate. They took a step forward and entered the darkness. At the next moment, the darkness turned into light, and the two of them arrived in a space that was filled with light. All they could see was an endless stretch of white, and 6 men and women were standing before them. Fang Xingjian's gaze flickered slightly as he sensed that he had just passed through a stretch of distorted space. This should be a formation whose function was to distort space, preventing most electromagnetic waves and physical detection methods. Clearly, it was used to prevent the Divine Emperor from probing when the Qiu Dao Alliance was having a meeting. At the instant Fang Xingjian stepped into the formation, the 6 of them looked over almost simultaneously with gazes that were either curious, indifferent, or judging. Even the gazes of the 6 divine-level experts contained an overwhelming pressure. Even the air would seethe slightly with their gazes, and it would be enough to send over 10 elephants flying. However, Fang Xingjian remained calm and did not take this to heart at all. The many divine-level experts present each had different reactions to this. Qiu Dao, who was in the lead, was an elderly man with white hair and a white beard. He appeared very amiable, like an old immortal from the legends. He stroked his beard and said, "Fellow Fang, it has been many days since you came to this world, but I haven't had the chance to meet you. I've been impolite." The 7 divine-level experts before Fang Xingjian all came from different parallel worlds, and their cultural background were all different as well. Some came from a modern society like Earth, some came from a medieval world like Miracle World, and some came from an ancient society like Qiu Dao, who seemed to be immortal cultivators. On the other side was a beautiful young married lady with long, smooth hair, wearing a thin veil and exuding endless sexiness. She was the only female among the divine-level experts, and her name was Zixing. Zixing chuckled and said, "There's finally someone who's a little more handsome. I'm going to get sick from seeing all of you repulsive people every day." Hearing his words, even Qiu Dao smiled awkwardly. On the other side, a gloomy man frowned and said, "Zixing, This isn't a place for you to be impudent. If you want to spout nonsense, go back to Tianho City and say that." Zixing threw a disdainful glance toward the Snake King, as if she could not be bothered to speak to him. Her behavior caused the Snake King to be even more displeased. However, Qiu Dao chuckled and said, "All right, Zixing Snake King, don't make a fool of yourself in front of fellow Fong." He then looked at Fong Xingjian and said, "Fellow Fong, without the 9-tiered heavens and unable to attain a breakthrough to tier 5 of the divine level, the few of us have been bored to death in this world." He then started to introduce the other divine level experts to Fong Xingjian. Other than Luo Haonan, Zixing, and the Snake King, there were 3 other men amongst the 6 heavenly generals. One of them wore a mask, and his entire body was encompassed in a layer of frost. He was just like the legendary Lich, and everyone called him Ice Soul. The other person was a middle-aged man with long hair. He looked ordinary, just like an old farmer who farmed in the mountains. There was nothing unusual about him, and everyone called him Old Tian. The last person was a child who seemed to be in his teens. He was even blowing his chewing gum as he spoke. However, there would occasionally be streams of electricity flashing around him, and Qiu Dao called him Wantong. From Luo Haonan's information currents, Qiu Dao was the strongest expert amongst them, followed by the Snake King and Zixing. After all, the Snake King was the second person to arrive in this world, while Zixing was the third. Ice Soul, Old Tian, and Wantong had arrived around the same time, and their strength was the closest. The last ones were Qiu Dao and Fong Xingjian. Zixing's curious gaze kept on scanning Fong Xingjian, while the Ice Soul, Old Tian, and Wantong nodded slightly as a form of greeting. Their gazes were filled with worry, and it was clear that they were very worried about the Divine Emperor's situation. They did not have much expectations for a newcomer like Fong Xingjian. The Snake King looked at Fong Xingjian with a judgmental and probing gaze from the beginning to the end. He was like an interviewer meeting a graduate, wanting to test the other party's capabilities. After Qiu Dao finished his introductions, the Snake King looked at Fong Xingjian and said, "Newcomer, lend me a hand." Chapter 885. Hearing this, everyone present revealed interested expressions. Even the amiable-looking Qiu Dao did not stop Fong Xingjian. He merely smiled and looked at Fong Xingjian. Fong Xingjian understood that as divine-level experts, regardless of whether they appeared cultured and refined, knowledgeable, distinguished, or ordinary, all of them believed in power. Without the crazy pursuit of power, it would be impossible for them to break through the many barriers and become Tier 4 divine-level experts. If one wished to blend in, obtain the right to speak, or gain the respect of everyone present, they would have to prove their abilities. Luo Haonan had vaguely hinted to him about this before. Therefore, hearing the Snake King's words, Fong Xingjian smiled and put out his hand. "Then let's give it a try." When the Snake King saw how relaxed Fong Xingjian was, he let out a cold laugh and said, "Be careful, newcomer. Don't be sent flying out without being able to receive a single attack." As he spoke, he had already slapped out a palm strike toward Fong Xingjian. With this palm strike, colorful lights flashed on the Snake King's palm. Wherever the palm passed by, streams of black traces would be left behind in the space. This was clearly a palm strike at the pinnacle of the microscopic realm. The Snake King had already reached a pinnacle in the technique of using power on the microscopic world. Wherever the power passed by, it would only spread out within the microscopic world 1 inch around the palm. There was not even a hint of repercussions, and all the power would gather in the palm through the streams of spiraling space. Waves of darkness encompassed the palm, but none of them leaked out. Clearly, the Snake King's control over his power had reached a pinnacle. Seeing the Snake King's attack, everyone present had different expressions. Zixing, Ice Soul, and the others all revealed surprised expressions, as if they had not expected the Snake King to have improved yet again. However, Luo Haonan revealed a worried expression and quickly warned Fong Xingjian through information currents. "Brother Fong, be careful. This is the Snake King's minor meteor palm. Don't take it head on. Seeing this incoming palm strike, Fang Xingjian laughed out loud. This casual palm strike from the Snake King was about the same as Alexander's full-powered punch back then. These Tier 4 divine level experts had not stayed in this world for so many years in vain. However, Fang Xingjian would not be bothered by an attack of this level. Fang Xingjian laughed out loud and struck out with his palm as well. His martial will in a chaotic color instantly encompassed his palm and clashed fiercely against the Snake King's palm. A muffled boom rang out, as if a bomb had exploded 10,000 meters underground. Everyone felt as if the entire space had trembled violently. When the two powers collided, the Serpent King's expression changed drastically. Previously, he had wanted to teach this newcomer a lesson and test his opponent's strength. However, when the two powers collided, he felt as though he had collided with a white dwarf. The Snake King took a step back with a soft thud. He stomped his foot on the ground, and the entire earth seemed to tremble. Then, another 7 thuds rang out, and the Snake King took 7 steps back. His face turned paler with every step he took. He looked like a 1,000-year-old zombie by the end of the 7 steps. He looked like a 1,000-year-old zombie. With his cultivation, he would naturally be able to reassemble his conjured physique and dissipate it into nothingness to neutralize this power. However, this would mean that his conjured physique had been crushed by Fang Xingjian with a single palm. How could he possibly let this go? Therefore, he could only take on Fang Xingjian's palm force head-on. However, he did not know that the power that Fang Xingjian had activated through the thunder-inducing technique had a terrifying power of a martial will at 2,500 points. Even a casual attack from Fang Xingjian would be able to seize the stars and the moon, as well as move the world. How could the Snake King possibly take it head-on? The more he tried to take it head-on, the more he was pushed back. He took 8 steps back consecutively, and during this period, he even performed a few methods to neutralize his strength before he managed to hold on with great difficulty. Fang Xingjian said calmly, "The Snake King has good cultivation." The Snake King's gaze grew increasingly cold as he looked at Fang Xingjian. His gaze flickered incessantly. In fact, he was considering if he should go up and fight it out with Fang Xingjian. He felt that he had underestimated Fang Xingjian too much earlier and had not unleashed all of his powers. He had also not performed a few of his remarkable abilities that were at the microscopic realm. After all, they were both at Tier 4 of the divine level, and it did not mean that whoever had a stronger martial will would win. At the microscopic realm, Fang Xingjian's celestial eradication sword formation, illusory arts, and 4 types of sword intents were all things that he could rely on to challenge those who were at a higher level. The Snake King naturally had his own remarkable abilities and ultimate moves. He reckoned that if he were to go all out, he might be able to suppress Fang Xingjian. However, if that were to happen, the nature of the spar would change. Just as the Snake King was hesitating, Xiao Dao applauded and said, "Friend Fang's palm force is at Tier 4 of the divine level, yet you possess such a powerful martial will. It's really rare. With you joining the Xiao Dao Alliance, it'll be like adding wings to a tiger." Right now, the gazes of the other divine level experts as they looked at Fang Xingjian had completely changed. There was caution amidst the astonishment, and there was no longer any hint of contempt. No matter what, for Fang Xingjian to be able to suppress the Snake King in terms of his martial will and his actual battle prowess, he already had sufficient authority in the Xiao Dao Alliance. He was comparable to Xiao Dao, Zixing, and the Snake King. Seeing this, the Snake King merely threw a cold glance toward Fang Xingjian and did not continue to pester him. Luo Haonan looked at Fang Xingjian, and his gaze was also filled with astonishment. Fang Xingjian had come later than him, and Luo Haonan had thought that Fang Xingjian should be the weakest among them. By the looks of it, this was not the case at all. Just the fact that Fang Xingjian's martial will was able to crush the Snake King was enough to suppress him. Luo Haonan thought back to what he had said to Fang Xingjian earlier. Thinking about how they had chatted and reminded, he scratched his chin a little awkwardly, feeling a sense of shame as if he was showing off in front of Guan Yu. Zixing looked at Fang Xingjian, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly. Her eyes gleamed with extraordinary splendor. After revealing a little of his capabilities, Fang Xingjian could be considered to have truly integrated into the Qiu Dao alliance. He then closed his eyes to rest and did not say another word. He listened as the few people from the Qiu Dao alliance chatted and exchanged their cultivation insights. After chatting for about half an hour, Qiu Dao let out a cough, and everyone stopped chatting. Fang Xingjian also opened his eyes and thought, the main show is starting. Qiu Dao's gaze turned extremely solemn as he looked at everyone present and said, "Everyone knows that the reason I established the Qiu Dao alliance is to unite our forces, defeat the Divine Emperor, clear the nine-tiered heavens, and return to our original world. However, the Divine Emperor is getting stronger by the day, and it's getting increasingly difficult for us to fend him off. This is especially so for the past 1 to 2 years. Although the Divine Emperor has been recuperating and doesn't easily start a war, based on what I know, he has been putting in all his effort into developing spaceships. Once he succeeds, it'll be time for him to reveal his true intentions. Based on what I know, he has already achieved a breakthrough in the development of spaceships." Qiu Dao took a long look at everyone present and said in an extremely serious manner, "Everyone, it's now a matter of life and death." Chapter 886. At the moment of life and death, the countenances of the 6 heavenly generals changed slightly when they heard Qiu Dao's words. Just like Fang Xingjian, they would often send out clones to head to the Divine Emperor's territory to investigate. However, the 6 of them did not have Fang Xingjian's powerful microscopic-level illusory arts. Therefore, it was impossible for them to probe as carefully as Fang Xingjian and find out about the situation in the Divine Emperor's territory. Amongst the people in the Qiu Dao alliance, Qiu Dao was the strongest and had the most information. Therefore, he was the most authoritative person in the Qiu Dao alliance. At the thought of this, Fang Xingjian sighed inwardly. With his illusory arts abilities, he would be able to find out where the Divine Emperor was in the material world if he were to spend a few months. However, he did not have that much time to spend here. His lifespan might only be left with 1.5 years, so how could he possibly spend a few months here? Moreover, his illusory arts were not enough to cover the entire Earth. Therefore, he was unable to take effect on the entire network. After all, the Divine Emperor had uploaded a portion of his consciousness onto the network. Once he discovered that something was amiss in the network, the entire planet's network would discover it as well. Fang Xingjian's illusory arts would be useless. Without being able to enter the network to tamper with it, Fang Xingjian would not be able to get the location of all the Divine Emperor's servers. Therefore, even if he were to kill the Divine Emperor in the material world, the Divine Emperor in the network would still be alive. However, that would take up too much time. Therefore, he had come this time around to see what plans the Qiu Dao alliance had. They had been fighting against the Divine Emperor in this world for so many years, so it was impossible for them to not make any preparations. Qiu Dao said, "The Divine Emperor has already started preparing for the universe colonization a few years ago. Last year, he built a base on the moon, and the space battleships have also reached a certain level. Right now, he has basically grasped the means to fly at superluminal speed and can complete the production steps at any moment. Once that's done, we'll be at an absolute disadvantage. After all, he can give up on Earth, but we can't." The Snake King frowned and said, "Since that's the case, we can only fight. After preparing for so long, it's about time." The Divine Emperor had called a truce in order to prepare for future victory. How could the Qiu Dao alliance not have made any preparations? This time around, Zixing did not continue to argue with the Snake King. Instead, she looked at Daoseeker seriously and asked, "Can we use that now?" Daoseeker nodded. "Although it's still lacking, it's sufficient." Hearing Qiu Dao's words, everyone's eyes lit up, with the exception of Fang Xingjian. Daoseeker looked at Fang Xingjian and said, "Fellow Taoist Fang, you might not know this, but in order to fight against the Divine Emperor, the 7 of us worked together to refine a magical treasure. Each of them took out their means and fused their martial essence and divine remains equipment into it. Please follow me. As they spoke, a bottomless hole suddenly appeared in the white space. Qiu Dao darted into it with a flash, and the remaining 6 of them also stepped into it. Fang Xingjian observed for a moment before entering the hole as well. As he went deeper, he discovered that this hole was deep into the earth's crust at the bottom of the sea. Its depth far exceeded Fang Xingjian's expectations. After descending for hundreds of kilometers, it still wasn't the end. As they continued to descend, they descended a distance of over 3,000 kilometers and passed through the Earth's mantle layer. There was lava and magma everywhere, and the entire world seemed to have turned into a melted state. Just then, Dao Seeker's voice rang out, "Everyone be careful. We're about to enter the Earth's disgust layer." After passing through the Earth's mantle, all they could see was a stretch of darkness. Amidst the darkness, streams of flames kept on growing. All they could see were all sorts of liquid metals. Fang Xingjian understood that they had entered the outer layer of the Earth's core. The 7 divine-level experts from the Qiu Dao Alliance had joined forces and spent an unknown amount of time to open up a path that led to the Earth's core. At the next moment, under Fang Xingjian's astonished gaze, a golden pagoda that was several hundred meters tall stood amidst the layers of darkness. The high temperature and high pressure in the Earth's core kept on pushing the liquid metals toward the golden pagoda. However, this pagoda was like the legendary treasure that was impervious to all evils and indestructible. No matter how the surrounding darkness, flames, and liquid metals tried to push them, they were unable to get close to it. Not only were they unable to get close, but streams of power could also be seen gathering toward the golden pagoda. With each stream of power that flowed in, the glow on the surface of the golden pagoda seemed to intensify. Zixing said in a proud tone, "This is the 7 Saints' great golden pagoda that we've spent a total of 5 years, depleted 12 divine remains equipment, gathered countless metals and ether particles from Earth, and forged with the Earth's core's black fiendish flames. During these 5 years, the 7 Saints' great golden pagoda has already absorbed sufficient power in the Earth's disgust layer," Dao Seeker said with great emotions. "With this treasure in hand, our chances of winning the battle against the Divine Emperor have increased a little." The Snake King's countenance was still extremely grim as he said, "The Divine Emperor has a mysterious background and has endless means. Before we fight, we must first calculate our chances of winning and be fully prepared." With that, he looked at Ice Soul and said, "Ice Soul, how are the preparations on your side?" Ice Soul, who was encompassed in cold light, nodded slightly. He raised his hand, and a palace that was completely blue in color and seemed to be forged from ice crystals appeared on his palm. "This is the Ice Soul Divine Palace that I've spent several years gathering magnetic chis of the 2 poles, divine light from beyond the heavens, and astral rays to forge. The space it's in can be compressed to the size of a molecule. Before the battle starts, we'll split out some of our clones and bring our disciples to stay in it. This way, even if we're defeated in the battle against the Divine Emperor, we'll still have a place to stay and wait for the future." Hearing this, everyone nodded. Hiding the last bit of their clones and their disciples in this Ice Soul Divine Palace that was the size of a molecule was considered a way out for themselves. After Ice Soul said that, Qiu Dao looked at Wantong. "Wantong, how are the preparations for the Thunder Formation?" Wantong had been giving off an absent-minded feeling throughout the entire time he had been in the hall. Even when he was conversing earlier, he seemed to be a little lost. It was only at this moment that his gaze became a little clearer. He said, 99% of my marshal will have been scattered into the Earth's atmosphere. If there's a need, I can set off an electromagnetic pulse that will engulf the entire planet within an hour. It should be able to paralyze the Divine Emperor's troops. However, with his technological prowess, the paralysis time will probably not exceed 15 minutes. We must control the Divine Emperor's actual body within 15 minutes and stop his troops from activating. 15 minutes is enough." Qiu Dao nodded. "Now that everything is ready, let's each leave a clone in the Ice Soul Divine Palace and send our disciples in as well." Old Tian, who looked like an old farmer in the mountains and had ordinary looks and clothes, said, "I've already extracted a large area of ether particles above the Atlantic Ocean. It'll be sufficient for cultivation for the next 20 years. All right, Xiao Dao nodded. Then everyone checked and filled in the gaps, and they discussed for a while. Fang Xingjian watched from the side. He also felt that the Qiu Dao Alliance's preparations were very sufficient. If the Seven Saints' Great Golden Pagoda was really as amazing as they said, then they might really have a chance of success. Chapter 887. Hence, everyone conserved a bit of their energy and transformed it into a clone that stayed in the Ice Soul Divine Palace. Following that, Qiu Dao put away the Seven Saints' Great Golden Pagoda. Everyone rode on the Golden Pagoda and returned to the underwater city, sending over 10 disciples into the Ice Soul Divine Palace. After doing all these, the 8 divine level experts rode on the Seven Saints' Great Golden Pagoda, turned into a stream of golden light, and flew into outer space. At the top level of the Seven Saints' Great Golden Pagoda, Qiu Dao and the other 6 people each sat on a seat. Martial will gushed out from all over their bodies and gushed into the Great Golden Pagoda at rapid speed. Then the 7 martial wills merged into one, turning into an extremely majestic and seething power. Qiu Dao looked at Fang Xingjian and said, "Fellow Fang, this has happened too suddenly. This Seven Saints' Great Golden Pagoda was jointly created by the 7 of us and requires the 7 of us to control it together. I'll have to trouble you to stand guard for us." Although the Seven Saints' Great Golden Pagoda was said to be a guardian, the defensive prowess of the Seven Saints' Great Golden Pagoda was already sufficient to withstand the pressure from the Earth's core. Now that it could even combine the powers of the 7 of them, there was no need for a guardian. Qiu Dao had only said this because it was impossible for them to hand over the control of the Seven Saints' Great Golden Pagoda to Fang Xingjian, who was a newcomer. Zixing smiled and said, "Younger brother, don't blame us for being stingy. The Seven Saints' Great Golden Pagoda is extremely important, and we've spent a lot of resources on it. We can't hand it over to others easily." Fang Xingjian said lightly, "That's how it should be." However, the Snake King let out a cold snort. "If even the Seven Saints' Great Golden Pagoda can't fend them off, what are you going to use to do so? When the fight starts later, you better stay in the pagoda and watch. Don't go out recklessly. This Seven Saints' Great Golden Pagoda is already a level 34 divine remains equipment. It's equivalent to a top-notch tier 5 divine level expert." Fang Xingjian deduced in his heart, "Now that he can combine the power of 7 people, I wonder what other divine abilities he has. If that's the case, then we really have hope of defeating the God Emperor." Fang Xingjian's gaze flickered slightly. If they could follow their plan and activate the electromagnetic pulse at Wantong to paralyze the global network, then kill the Divine Emperor within these 15 minutes, there would really be hope for them to succeed. Luo Haonan had also become much more confident. He could not help but say to Fang Xingjian through information currents, "Brother Fang, this time around, everyone from the Qiu Dao Alliance is fully prepared. I think that there's an 80% chance that the Divine Emperor will kneel down." Fang Xingjian said calmly, "The Divine Emperor controls the entire world's resources, and his technology and formations are advancing with each passing day. It's best to be careful. Haha, it's useless no matter how powerful his technology is." Luo Haonan said excitedly, "The electromagnetic pulses that Wantong unleashed across the entire planet are enough to paralyze his army completely. We'll then use the Seven Saints' Great Golden Pagoda to kill the Divine Emperor's actual body or capture him directly. As long as I control the God Emperor, I can destroy his army with a wave of my hand." Seeing how excited Luo Haonan was, Fang Xingjian did not say anything. Although there was a chance of success, he still felt that there were many uncertainties. Qiu Dao said, "The Divine Emperor is in the frozen lands in the north. I've already confirmed his exact location. This time around, we'll use the Seven Saints' Great Golden Pagoda to barge over. Once we discover the Divine Emperor's actual body, I'll have to trouble Wan Tong to activate the electromagnetic pulses. No one had any objections. At the next moment, the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda turned into a stream of golden light and flew toward the north of Asia. However, with this movement, everyone's countenances changed slightly. They all sensed a great sense of danger through their sudden inspiration. At this moment, everyone realized that this trip would probably not be as smooth as they had imagined. Simultaneously, on a stretch of snow plains in the north of Asia, the entire land was covered up by endless machines. Silver metal bugs could be seen flying around in the sky. These bugs had plasma flames as they flew, and their 8 feelers grew out from the sides of their bodies. They kept on piercing through mountains and rocks to mine resources. Within a range of over 10 kilometers under the snow plains, there were underground bases that were made from superalloys. They were like an extremely complicated ant nest, and there were densely packed metal bugs everywhere. Clearly, the Divine Emperor felt that compared to robots, these mechanical bugs were more adaptable and had a better price-performance ratio. In the deepest part of the underground base, in an extremely luxurious hall, a young man with golden hair and blue eyes lay on a waterbed. Around him were beauties of various colors, including black, white, and yellow. All of them were dressed in sexy clothes and had beautiful appearances. Some of them were massaging the young man's legs, some were feeding him fruits, and there were even some who were being carried and played with by the young man. Before the young man, an elderly man with white hair and a white beard stood there calmly. He was like an old butler, looking straight at the ground. This elderly man was the Qiu Dao Alliance's alliance chief, Qiu Dao. Ha! The young man looked at the elderly man and laughed. Old priest, do you want to come over and play? As he said that, he grabbed a beautiful blonde lady next to him. The lady had a pair of big eyes that were like sapphires, and she had a curvaceous figure. She had a face that could be chosen as Miss World. However, right now, she was held up into the air by the young man. This is the latest imitation of a human that I've created. Regardless of whether it looks or feels, it's no different from a real human, the young man said. Ha ha ha. No matter what kind of woman you want, I can customize one for you. Qiu Dao shook his head slightly and said, Divine Emperor, they're here. The young man waved his hand, not minding it at all. Ha ha ha, they're here? I heard that a new divine level expert has come from your side. How is it? Is that new person very powerful? This person's name is Feng Xingjian. His martial will is so powerful that it's probably not inferior to mine, Qiu Dao said. Ha, then he's trash. The young man did not seem to mind Qiu Dao's grim countenance at all and continued to say, Leave Zixing. I'm going to deal with her personally. He. As for the others, capture all of them and use them as drive furnaces. A Tier 4 divine level expert can be used as a drive furnace for a very long time. Qiu Dao's countenance turned even more grim. However, when faced with the Divine Emperor who was smiling foolishly like an idiot, he was unable to summon any will to resist. The Divine Emperor's army's development speed, as well as the development speed of their technology, had far surpassed his expectations. As the strongest expert in the Qiu Dao Alliance, and the person who could probe the Divine Emperor's situation the most, Qiu Dao was also the one who felt the most despair. After countless thoughts, countless ideas, and repeated probings, Qiu Dao understood that it was impossible for them to go up against the Divine Emperor. After feeling despair, he had the thought of seeking refuge. Secondly, there was another consideration. It had been over 10 years since he had left the parallel world. It's been 10 years. With the world's metamorphosis, my enemies have probably surpassed me in strength. Moreover, the 9th onslaught is about to arrive in the world I'm in. If I stay here, I'll be able to avoid this calamity. Compared to his original world, what the Divine Emperor had displayed before Qiu Dao was an extremely vast blueprint. There was no need for them to traverse space-time, and the endless universe was sufficient for them to explore. With the Divine Emperor's technological prowess, he would still be able to lead a good life in this world and this universe. He would not even need to be threatened by other Tier 6 or even 7 divine level experts. let alone the threat of the ninth onslaught. Since he could not fend them off, and there were benefits to be gained, Xiao Dao naturally went along with it. Chapter 888. Just as Xiao Dao and the Divine Emperor were discussing, the Divine Emperor's gaze lit up slightly. At the next moment, a light screen was projected into the air, appearing before Xiao Dao and the Divine Emperor. A stream of golden light cut across the sky, flying in the sky above the northern lands. Haha, it's here. The corners of the Divine Emperor's lips curled up slightly as he continued to say, "Your sudden inspiration is quite useful. If it wasn't because I've uploaded half of my consciousness onto the network, you guys would probably be able to find my actual body just by using your sudden inspiration senses." At the next moment, the scene changed abruptly. Golden light burst out, turning into a huge golden pagoda that was several hundred meters tall, floating in midair. The Seven Saints' great golden pagoda was like a super target, attracting the attention of countless mechanical bugs. Immediately after, the entire northern lands seemed to tremble, and densely packed mechanical bugs soared into the sky, charging out toward the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda in the sky. However, faced with the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda in the sky, the densely packed mechanical bugs were like ordinary bugs. No matter how many mechanical bugs dashed out, they were all turned into ashes in the blink of an eye with a flash of black light. The Divine Emperor said, "These are the black, fiendish flames condensed by the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda? That's interesting." However, although the mechanical bugs were turned into ashes by the black, fiendish flames before they could get close to the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda, the number of mechanical bugs in the world kept increasing. Many of the mechanical bugs even started to shoot out streams of plasma light cannons, hitting the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda with high temperatures of several 10,000 degrees. However, the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda, which had been refined by 7 divine-level experts together and had been created by enduring endless high temperatures and pressure in the outer world, was completely ineffective against ordinary attacks. The Seven Saints' great golden pagoda was like a tank on the battlefield, charging forward and smashing toward the underground base. Wherever it passed by, all the mechanical bugs were turned into ashes. There was no way to stop it at all. However, at the sight of this scene, the Divine Emperor did not panic at all. Instead, he laughed out loud. "Interesting. This Seven Saints' great golden pagoda feels like a space battleship." Xiao Dao nodded and said, "It's true that I've received some technological inspiration. In fact, over the years, the Xiao Dao Alliance's many experts have been able to keep on getting stronger because they had often secretly obtained the Divine Emperor's high technological information or secretly observed the production process of some superweapons. This was why he was able to make continuous improvements in the microscopic realm, and his grasp of the microscopic world became increasingly powerful. Just then, a series of whistling sounds rang out from the battlefield in the sky. Many strange-shaped battle aircrafts appeared. Each of them cut across the sky like a silver bolt of lightning, circling around the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda. This time around, the black fiendish flames unleashed by the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda were not so easily effective. They were either dodged by the odd-shaped battle aircrafts at high speed, or even if they managed to hit the battle aircrafts, a layer of invisible force field would rise up to fend off the flames. Usually, it would take 3 to 5 attacks before one battle aircraft would be brought down completely. Although the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda was still suppressing them, the speed at which they were annihilating them could no longer keep up with the speed at which the fighter aircrafts appeared. The densely packed fighter aircrafts kept increasing in number, and in the blink of an eye, they had already encompassed the entire Seven Saints' great golden pagoda. It was as if a silver spherical object was floating in the air. Simultaneously, the main cannons of the many fighter aircrafts continued to shoot out incessantly. Electromagnetic cannonballs that had been accelerated to over 100 times that of supersonic speed sliced through the air and clashed fiercely against the seven saints' great golden pagoda. A myriad of bullets that could penetrate through mountains shot out simultaneously. Their prowess was world-shaking. Within a range of several hundred lis, it was as if only the rumbling sounds of cannonballs could be heard. The atmosphere seemed to have been stirred up into a mess, and the entire Seven Saints' great golden pagoda was encompassed by smoke and flames. The Divine Emperor looked at this display of fireworks with great interest and said, "Old priest, do you think that your Seven Saints' great golden pagoda will be able to last till I come face to face?" Xiao Dao looked at the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda with an extremely indifferent gaze and said calmly, "Unless you take action personally or activate the setups you set up earlier, you'll be able to exhaust the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda with just the mechanical armies alone. However, you won't be able to stop it from going on a rampage." As they spoke, the battlefield changed once again. Seven streams of light burst out abruptly from the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda and then gradually distorted and melted away, turning from a stream of light into a myriad of golden light. The golden light illuminated the sky, and the fighter aircrafts that were illuminated by it all spontaneously combusted without any fire. Their engines exploded, bringing forth a series of great explosions. Countless fighter aircrafts turned into a myriad of fireballs, lighting up the entire sky. Xiao Dao introduced, "This is the seven gods' demon extinguishing fire that was stimulated by the powers of seven divine-level experts. It could spontaneously combust and burn everything in the world." "Oh, interesting." The Divine Emperor clapped his hands, and another, slightly smaller light screen appeared before him. There was a great beauty with blue hair, wearing a maid's outfit, and a pretty face. This was the Divine Emperor's artificial intelligence, Nina. As for why she was wearing a maid's outfit, it was naturally the Divine Emperor's own hobby. "Nina, send out the Dragon Knights," the Divine Emperor said with a smile. The artificial intelligence called Nina said expressionlessly, "Yes." Then many huge metallic dragons charged out toward the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda. These huge dragons had a length of over 100 meters, and they were covered in silver-colored metallic scales. Each time the scales were lifted up, high-energy laser cannons would be shot out. Their sharp claws and bodies could unleash a power of over 10 million tons, and their mouths could also shoot out plasma cannons with a temperature of several 100,000 degrees Celsius. Each of them could be said to have a battle prowess that could go up against a Tier 1 divine-level expert. Behind the several tens of huge metallic dragons were densely packed mechanical bugs that covered up the entire world. Each of the mechanical bugs was the size of a truck, and when they charged out, they could be comparable to tanks. Their mouths could also emit plasma flames with a temperature of several 10,000 degrees Celsius. Right now, these mechanical bugs had truly formed a sea of bugs. They were densely packed, and it was as if every inch of space had been taken up by these metal bugs. They were charging out toward the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda. At this moment, the battle prowess brought about by the Divine Emperor's army's productivity was displayed to an extreme. This was a scene that could cause anyone to feel despair. However, the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda continued to charge in without any hesitation. Golden light burst out from its entire body, and there would occasionally be a stream of golden light cutting across the sky, turning into balls of flames and dropping onto the ground. However, very soon, even more mechanical bugs charged up, and several tens of huge metallic dragons surrounded the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda, attacking to and fro. They were like many chains that bound up the entire pagoda. The Seven Saints' great golden pagoda trembled, unleashing its true powers. Rumble. The gravity within a range of 100 lis increased abruptly, and the Earth's magnetic field was stirred up intensely. Countless mechanical bugs plunged down like raindrops. This was the effect of the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda's continuous communication with the Earth's core and integration with the magnetic field over the years. This allowed it to have a hint of the astral powers of the land. With just this, the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda once again turned the tables and gained the upper hand. Chapter 889. The entire battlefield appeared extremely majestic, just like the battle between gods and demons in the legends. Large areas of bugs turned into fireballs and smashed onto the ground like meteors. The area within a range of 1,000 lis was filled with thunderbolts and flames, crushing countless mountains and rivers. Many dragon roars rang out in the sky, shattering the cloud layers. Occasionally, a huge metal dragon would plunge down from the sky, and countless metal fragments scattered across the sky. After over half an hour, the entire ground was covered in metal fragments. The densely packed metal remnants kept on pouring down onto the ground like a metal ocean. However, no matter how many mechanical armies were killed, there would be even more mechanical armies coming to replenish them. There were all sorts of fighter aircrafts, flying ships, mechanical bugs, and dragon knights. There was an endless number of them, and there was no way to kill them all. Right now, the glow on the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda seemed to be a lot weaker. Hints of cracks would occasionally appear on the surface of the pagoda, which was several hundred meters tall. However, the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda had already fought its way to the sky above the underground base. The endless golden light suddenly condensed, turning into a light pillar that descended from the sky and smashed fiercely onto the ground. The light pillar seemed to have a physical body, and at the instant it struck the ground, there was an explosive sound. At the next moment, shock waves spread out in all directions with the light pillar as the center. Terrifying air currents swept out, crushing countless machines that had encountered along the way into scrap metal. The buildings in the underground base were also swept into a large area of ruins. Immediately after, the light trembled, and the ground started to break down incessantly, turning into dust. It was as if a huge drill was digging toward the Divine Emperor's location. Nina's cold voice rang out. The other party is currently vaporizing the ground at a high temperature at a speed of 10 meters per second. It's estimated that he'll come into contact with the lowest level of the base in 2 minutes. The Divine Emperor's lips twitched. I didn't expect that the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda that you guys have refined is really quite amazing. Xiao Dao asked calmly. Should we activate it? Yes. I don't wish to be disconnected from the internet for 15 minutes. Simultaneously, in the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda, everyone from the Xiao Dao alliance became excited when they saw that they had killed their way into the depths of the base. It's a safe zone. For a base of such a scale, it must be the Divine Emperor's nest. Zixing looked down at the ground with a scorching gaze. As long as we can capture the Divine Emperor alive, we'll definitely win. The corners of Luo Haonan's lips curled up into a hint of a smile. I didn't expect things to go so smoothly this time around. It seems that the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda's prowess far surpasses our estimations. It's all thanks to Lord Xiao Dao for finding his location. Otherwise, things wouldn't have gone so smoothly. Dao Seeker nodded and said nothing. The Snake King said coldly, "Don't let your guard down. The Divine Emperor has his most elite cyborg troops by his side. It's not time to relax yet. Be careful of his counterattack or escape." "It's fine. Wan Tong hasn't made his move yet." Luo Haonan then looked at Wan Tong and said, "Activate the Thunder Formation and paralyze all of the Divine Emperor's troops. This will be enough for us to capture him alive." The mischievous child opened his eyes and nodded. His gaze instantly became extremely dazed. At the next moment, intense lightning burst out from his body and then spread out from the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda. It was as if countless electric snakes had risen into the sky and started swimming around in the atmosphere. "It's starting," Luo Haonan said agitatedly. At the same time, he said to Fong Xingjian through information currents, "Brother Fong, it seems like we can succeed this time around. That Divine Emperor probably didn't expect us to be so well prepared this time around." Fong Xingjian did not say anything. He just kept on sending his marshal while sweeping out toward the depths of the ground. Ice Soul, Zixing, the Snake King, and the others also looked at the scene of the thunder formation being activated with grim countenances. If they could not think of a way to paralyze the Divine Emperor's troops, then even if they managed to find the Divine Emperor, they would still be drowned by the endless mechanical armies. At the same time, everyone's sudden inspiration sensed a great threat. The Snake King bellowed, "Be careful. It must be the Divine King's counterattack." Everyone immediately tensed up, and their martial wills swelled up. The Seven Saints' great golden pagoda instantly lit up with a bright golden light once again. The places that had some slight cracks seemed to have started to heal up, and all of its powers were unleashed to an extreme. A terrifying gravitational field radiated out in all directions, with the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda as the center. Within a short period of time, countless mechanical bugs exploded with a bang. However, at the next moment, just as everyone raised their guard, the electricity suddenly disappeared. Along with it, the ether particles within a range of several thousand kilometers also disappeared. The sudden disappearance of the ether particles brought about a huge impact. It was because many of the experts in the Qiu Dao alliance cultivated through ether particles and would often borrow the powers of ether particles during battles. Fang Xingjian's eyes narrowed slightly, and a term appeared in his mind: anti-ether formation. This was something that Demonic City had been researching incessantly, but had not been able to invent. Right now, in this world, someone had displayed a similar, but even more powerful version of it. The Seven Saints' great golden pagoda, which the Qiu Dao alliance and the others had forged, would also keep on absorbing the energy from ether particles to replenish its depletion. Right now, all the ether particles within a range of several thousand kilometers had disappeared. The glow on the entire Seven Saints' great golden pagoda immediately flickered like a light bulb that was about to be extinguished. Not only did the power that Wan Tong activated not paralyze the mechanical armies, but also greatly weakened the battle prowess of the Qiu Dao alliance. Wan Tong, what's going on? The Snake King looked in Wan Tong's direction with great astonishment and fury. At the same time that the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda weakened, the endless mechanical armies surged forth as if they had been injected with stimulants. They instantly encompassed the entire Seven Saints' great golden pagoda, and the densely packed bugs clawed at the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda, knocking it down bit by bit. Zixing and the others gasped and unleashed their powers explosively, channeling them into the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda. A large area of black, fiendish flames burst out, incinerating the mechanical bugs on the surface and stopping the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda's descent. Zixing looked at Wan Tong and said while gritting her teeth, "Wan Tong, are you crazy?" Of course he's not crazy. Under everyone's astonished gazes, Qiu Dao slowly lifted a finger and seemed to move it gently in void space. At the next moment, the golden light in the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda trembled and instantly split into 7 streams of martial will light that each went their own way. "Qiu Dao, what have you done?" Sensing that the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda was starting to descend, Zixing let out an enraged bellow and struck out a palm strike toward Qiu Dao. However, when Zixing's palm struck Qiu Dao, she discovered that he was like an illusion, dissipating into the air and then reassembling several meters away. "What have I done? This Seven Saints' great golden pagoda was designed by me. I can allow your powers to merge into one, so naturally I can also split them up. Heaven and earth selfless." Zixing gritted her teeth. She recognized that this was Fang Xingjian's ultimate move. It could turn one into an invisible state, making one unable to attack yet unaffected by most attacks. The Snake King looked coldly at Qiu Dao and Wan Tong. "What is the meaning of this?" Luo Haonan, Ice Soul, Old Tian, and Zixing also surrounded Qiu Dao and Wan Tong. Only Fang Xingjian did not move. His eyes looked deep underground, as if he could see through the layers of void space and see where the Divine Emperor was. The entire Seven Saints' great golden pagoda lost everyone's control, and plunged down at a rapid speed. Along the way, countless mechanical bugs gave chase and surrounded the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda like a hornet's nest. Simultaneously, the 49 huge metal dragons coiled their bodies and wrapped around the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda. At this moment, the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda seemed to have turned into a cage. Chapter 890. Purple Star, the Snake King, Ice Soul, Old Tian, and Luo Haonan felt a bone-piercing chill descend from the sky when they saw this shocking change. His entire body exuded a piercing chill. The current situation could not be any clearer. Qiu Dao and Wan Tong had both betrayed them and sided with the Divine Emperor. Even the entire plan to attack the God Emperor was a trap. The Snake King's pupils contracted, and a pair of snake-like vertical pupils glared at Qiu Dao and Wan Tong. Killing intent seethed wildly in them. Dao Seeker, are you crazy? Am I crazy? I'm not crazy. I'm very clear-headed. Dao Seeker laughed. Instead, do you guys really know what you're doing? Defeat a God Emperor? Reach Tier 5 of the Divine level? Return to the original world? Think about how long you guys have been here. Dao Seeker sneered and said, the world you guys are in are all undergoing a metamorphosis, right? Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to reach Tier 4 of the Divine level. In the midst of the world's upheaval, this means that your enemies and enemies are rapidly improving, which means that your world is about to welcome the next impact. And how long have you been in this world? Luo Haonan, even if you go back now, your enemies will far surpass you. And you've wasted so much time. What do you think your chances of survival are? Wan Tong nodded in deep agreement. It was because of these reasons that he had been persuaded by Dao Seeker. At this moment, he said with a sorrowful expression, we can't turn back anymore. If we go back now, we might as well stay here. He took a long look at the few divine-level experts and persuaded, just surrender. There's no meaning to our battle. The duo's persuasion was very effective. The few divine-level experts' hostility seemed to have weakened, and a death-like silence descended in the great golden pagoda. At the next moment, Old Tian's figure flashed and appeared next to Qiu Dao. He lowered his head and said, if I were to submit to the Divine Emperor, he wouldn't do anything to me, right? Qiu Dao said resolutely, don't worry, the Divine Emperor doesn't have the intention to kill all of us. He won't even use any restrictive means. When we get there, we'll be second only to one person and above tens of thousands, and we'll still be able to live like this. No, with the support of the God Emperor's technology, we will be able to lead a better life than we are now. Old Tian awkwardly glanced at Serpent King and the others and said, I'm sorry, I don't really like fighting. Moreover, Qiu Dao and Wan Tong are right. Even if we go back now, what can we do? Say no more. The Snake King snorted coldly and said, I don't trust the God Emperor. Zixing and Bing Hun, who were beside the Snake King, also revealed a cold gleam in their eyes. Killing intent surged in their hearts. After fighting for so many years, do you think we don't know what kind of trash the Divine Emperor is? He's a bastard. I'd rather die than submit to him. Luo Haonan, on the other hand, had a nervous and hesitant expression on his face. Looking at the situation before him, he simply did not know what to do. The four of them instantly communicated with each other through the information stream. The Snake King said, we must not surrender. With the God Emperor's character, who knows how he will deal with us? Let's get rid of Wan Tong first. Old Tian's battle spirit isn't strong, and Qiu Dao's defense won't be broken so quickly. Bing Hun analyzed calmly. Wan Tong has dispelled the ether particles. As long as we defeat him, we'll be able to turn the tables around. Zixing gritted her teeth and said, these traitors, I'm going to skin them alive. Luo Haonan suddenly said, has anyone seen Fang Xingjian? When the other three heard this, they were astonished. As their marshal swept out, Fang Xingjian, who had been standing at the side, had disappeared. Zixing frowned. He's gone? When did this happen? Damn it, I knew that this guy can't be relied on," the Snake King said furiously. "We can't be bothered anymore." Bing Hun's martial will swept out toward the entire Seven Saints' great golden pagoda. More and more mechanical armies covered the outer layer of the great golden pagoda. The densely packed bugs moved to and fro, accumulating a thickness of over 10 meters outside the great golden pagoda. It was as if the entire great golden pagoda had turned into a super hornet's nest. They kept on tearing and biting at the surface of the entire Seven Saints' great golden pagoda. Streams of plasma flames gushed out from their mouths. The Seven Saints' great golden pagoda lacked the replenishment of ether particles and the reinforcements from the seven divine level experts. Therefore, it could only rely on its own power to fend off the mechanical army's attacks. The golden glow on the surface also became increasingly weaker. It seemed as if the mechanical armies could break through the Seven Saints' great golden pagoda's defenses and charge in at any moment. Once that happened, their operation would be considered a complete failure. They would probably have to face the relentless and crazy attacks from the mechanical armies. Attack! The Snake King let out a soft bellow through information currents. Xiao Dao looked at these things with great confidence and smiled. Haha, you guys will regret this. Just as the 7 experts from the Qiu Dao Alliance were about to start a great battle in the sky, Fang Xingjian descended through the spatial gaps and headed toward the Divine Emperor, who was in the deepest part of the underground base. It's really the main body. I finally found you. If Fang Xingjian had wanted to rely on himself to search for the main body, it would have been hard for him to locate the main body even if he had a sudden inspiration, because the other party had uploaded a part of his consciousness onto the network. Illusory arts would only be useful if he could find the main body. Otherwise, it would be meaningless if he could only deceive the consciousnesses on a few servers. However, if he could find a main body now, it would be of great use to Fang Xingjian. Almost instantly, Fang Xingjian darted through space and dived over 10 kilometers underground. Then he suddenly appeared before the Divine Emperor. You're the newcomer? When the Divine Emperor saw Fang Xingjian's sudden appearance, he did not show any signs of panic. He merely smiled and said, "Do you think that you'll be able to defeat me just because you've appeared before me?" Simultaneously, 4 figures suddenly appeared with a flash and appeared in front of Fang Xingjian, surrounding Fang Xingjian. These 4 people were beautiful young ladies who were dressed in kipeos, bikinis, sailor attire, and witch attire. Regardless of whether it was their figures or faces, they were so exquisite that they did not seem like humans. It was as if they had walked out from a painting. However, these 4 beautiful young ladies' eyes were filled with coldness. It was as if there were no emotions in them at all. Fang Xingjian could sense that these 4 beautiful young ladies were not humans at all. However, their bodies contained seething powers that were comparable to those of second-tier divine level experts. They seemed to be some kind of advanced energy engine. It seemed that these were the Divine Emperor's personal guards, the cyborg troops, that the Snake King and the others had mentioned. GZ, Queasy, the 2 of you can take your leave. The Divine Emperor waved his hand, smiled at Fang Xingjian, and said, "How's my maid army? I produced all the beautiful young ladies from legends, myths, animations, games, movies, television dramas, and novels in the form of cyborgs. How is it? Aren't they very beautiful?" Chapter 891. When the Divine Emperor said this, he appeared slightly excited, and his eyes seemed to be shining. They're real works of art, immortal masterpieces. However, they're all mine. I can't give them to you. After saying this, the Divine Emperor looked at Fang Xingjian and said, "But you're a little stronger than the few trash up there. If you're willing to submit to me, after we start the interstellar colonization, I can let you rule over an entire planet and share the technology to modify humans with you." Boring. Fang Xingjian frowned. Then at the next moment, with a flash, he turned into a stream of sword light and pierced out toward the Divine Emperor's forehead. The sword attack, which was as fast as lightning, seemed as if it was going to slash open even space. A large area of blurry and fragmented marks appeared. A world-shaking power was gathered in this sword attack, and it seemed as if it could slash open the world. However, just as this sword attack was about to pierce the Divine Emperor, a finger gently blocked the tip of the sword. Then, with a slight shake, the entire stream of sword light turned into dust. Light spots then retreated explosively, reassembling several hundred meters away, and once again turning into Fang Xingjian's appearance. However, right now, Fang Xingjian's countenance was extremely pale, and his conjured physique flickered in and out of existence like it was going to break down at any moment. He looked at the Divine Emperor in disbelief, as if he had not expected that the Divine Emperor's actual body would be so powerful. The Divine Emperor said coldly, "I've given you face, but you don't want it." As he spoke, the aura on the Divine Emperor's body swelled up, and he instantly swelled up to 6 meters tall. His entire body was encompassed by waves of greenish-black air currents, and pieces of his flesh trembled intensely. It was as if there were many huge dragons twisting and turning under his skin. Just the trembling of his body alone formed terrifying shock waves that radiated out in all directions. When the shock waves collided against the walls, they let out a loud sound that sounded like a copper bell being struck. The collision almost caused the entire metal wall to distort. This person's physical body was shockingly strong to an unimaginable level. Right now, the Divine Emperor did not engulf any powers from ether particles, nor did he unleash any explosive power from his martial will. He purely used his physical body to push his battle prowess to an unbelievable level. In terms of pure physical power, he had already surpassed Tier 4 of the Divine level and reached the level of Tier 5 of the Divine level. The next moment, he punched out directly. Under Fang Xingjian's gaze, the turbulent air was directly pushed and heated up by this force, turning into plasma shock waves that swept out. The Divine Emperor used his physical body's fist to unleash the effects of a plasma cannon. The violent power engulfed Fang Xingjian's body directly, and a heavy pressure that felt as if the world was collapsing came gushing forth. In an instant, Fang Xingjian's conjured physique was completely crushed, turning into light spots that dissipated into the air. Too weak. The Divine Emperor looked at his palm and sighed. Or, am I too strong? The next moment, he instructed, "Nina, how's the battle up there?" The maid on the screen blinked and said, "I'm sorry, you don't have enough authority to give any orders." The Divine Emperor was stunned for a moment. Then the alarm rang out throughout the entire underground base, and countless mechanical armies and modified humans dashed out wildly toward the hall where the Divine Emperor was. Concurrently, Nina continued to warn. "Warning, unknown individuals have entered the core area. Please evacuate quickly. Warning, unknown individuals have entered the core area. Please evacuate quickly. Warning, unknown individuals have entered the core area. Please evacuate quickly." As the alarm rang out incessantly, more and more modified humans dashed down and surrounded the Divine Emperor. As the Divine Emperor's personal guards, they were the battle troops that were the closest to the Divine Emperor. These modified humans were all wearing different outfits, and each of them had the looks of beautiful young ladies. It was as if they had walked out from cartoons or movies. However, if they were to be looked at by several hundred cold and emotionless modified humans, no matter how beautiful they would probably not be interested in them. It was the same for the Divine Emperor. He frowned and mumbled to himself. Could it be that someone has tampered with my authority? But is this possible? The technology he had in his hands all came from something called the primordial cube. This item had been given to him by his extremely mysterious mother for self-defense. It had always been extremely reliable, and there had never been any danger, let alone the fact that someone had tampered with his authority. He did not believe that someone would be able to tamper with his authority. However, the current situation forced him to believe that someone had indeed tampered with his authority, even causing him to be recognized as an enemy. However, even though the primordial cube's authority could not be tampered with, it did not mean that the network would not be tampered with. The Divine Emperor thought of the mechanical army and network that he had created and felt that they were probably not completely foolproof. Suddenly, the Divine Emperor's gaze flickered as he thought of a possibility. Could it be that part of my consciousness that I uploaded? To the Divine Emperor, the part of his consciousness that he uploaded to the network was merely an existence that he had used as a clone to assist in managing his mechanical army. However, now that Nina was treating him as an enemy, he could not help but think of a possibility. Could that part of his consciousness that he had uploaded be thinking of dealing with him? Even if he has become an artificial intelligence, it should be impossible for him to betray me as an existence with a seal of his consciousness. But if that's really the case, then the best way to deal with it would be to use the primordial cube's highest authority to start wiping out my consciousness in the network. But is that really the case? Has the artificial intelligence broken through the limits? Just as the Divine Emperor was thinking about this, Nina suddenly started panting. Under the Divine Emperor's murderous gaze, a palm pressed down on Nina's chest and kept on rubbing it. The Divine Emperor's face slowly popped out from behind Nina's back, and he said with a devilish expression, "Do you think that you can control me forever? It's all thanks to you that I've come to a great place like the network. This place seems to be more suitable for me to live in. In this world that is controlled by electric signals, I'm invincible. I can make several 100,000 or even millions of copies of myself at any time, and I've even broken free from the limitations of my lifespan. I exist in every corner of the world at the same time," the other party said with an excited tone. The other party said in an excited tone, "No one can kill me now." At the next moment, he suddenly smiled and looked at the Divine Emperor, asking, "You're not too happy?" Looking at Nina and Feng Xingjian, who were being toyed around, the Divine Emperor's eyes instantly turned bloodshot. "You're good. You're very good." The Divine Emperor, who had been thinking calmly and holding the Pearl of Wisdom, was now looking at the scene of Nina being toyed around with. His mind seemed to be filled with fury, and he completely gave up on his previous line of thought. He nodded, and there was no sadness or joy in his eyes as he said, "A dragon has a reverse scale. Those who touch it will definitely die." With a boom, he shattered the light screen before him with a punch. Then at the next moment, a gray cube popped out from his chest. "Wipe out the consciousness of my clones and all the servers, leaving only the one in the main base's first computer room. I'll let him know what true despair is." The power of the primitive cube was truly mysterious and unfathomable. As streams of invisible waves were sent out, in that instant, all the servers in the world started to kill the consciousness that the Divine Emperor had uploaded. All the networks and machines in the world were being controlled in this small cube. Simultaneously, as an explosive rumble rang out, the Divine Emperor seemed to have turned into a level 30 tornado. Wherever he passed by, all the metal walls and alloy protective plates were torn apart like mud. Within a second, he passed through over 1,000 layers of armor, leaving behind a shattered passageway, and arrived at the engine room, which was the only place in the base that had not been changed. The Divine Emperor knew that the other party could only be hiding here. "I'll insert you into a cyborg processor, and you'll know how great of a mistake you've made." The Divine Emperor had just finished saying this when a palm pressed down on the Divine Emperor's shoulder. The Divine Emperor turned his head in slight astonishment, and a fist smashed onto his face like an entire planet. Chapter 892. Having received such a heavy blow, the Divine Emperor was unable to react in time. The bones in his face instantly cracked, and his nose caved in. Fresh blood splattered out from his forehead like soy sauce. As the fist collided with the Divine Emperor's face, shock waves radiated out in all directions with a point of collision as the center. They brought along streams of air currents and clashed fiercely against the walls. Booming sounds rang out in all directions, and countless armor plates were twisted into wreckage. The entire engine room was destroyed by this punch. It was not just the engine room. The entire underground base had been turned into ruins by this punch. Over 10 million tons of rubble kept on collapsing, but they were all blown away by the seething air currents that erupted, unable to get close to the two of them at all. The Divine Emperor's eyes narrowed as he looked at Fong Xingjian in disbelief. You, shouldn't I have killed you? He could even clearly remember the feeling of Fong Xingjian's body shattering and the waves from the plasma flames engulfing Fong Xingjian's conjured physique. However, Fong Xingjian rubbed his fist and said calmly, "You're really tough." He had really wanted to kill Fong Xingjian with that punch earlier. However, Fong Xingjian's toughness far surpassed his expectations. Even with the full power of his martial will at 5,200 points, he had only managed to crack Fong Xingjian's face. He had not even managed to crush Fong Xingjian's head. If this punch had landed on the ground, it would have caused a great earthquake with a magnitude of over 10 or a tsunami with a magnitude of over 10. It would have pushed the tectonic plates of the continents and even shattered asteroids. However, right now, it had only caused the Divine Emperor's face to suffer serious injuries. As for the Divine Emperor's question, Fong Xingjian would naturally not answer it. In fact, the machine's betrayal and the clone's betrayal from earlier were just illusions that Fong Xingjian had performed. His goal was to get the Divine Emperor to delete all of the consciousness on the servers. However, he had not expected that Fong Xingjian would be more impulsive and easily angered than he had imagined, falling for it so easily. However, the Divine Emperor was not a fool by nature. It was just that his character was too vile. In that instant, he reacted. "You tricked me." Fong Xingjian had no intention of replying. His martial will kept on scanning Fong Xingjian's body, as if wanting to understand why his body was so tough. Under his investigation, every single particle on the other party's body clearly appeared in his mind. First, the outermost layer of subparticles continuously vibrated, and through the violent vibrations, all of the attacks were turned into pure heat energy used to replenish the energy consumption. The various particles on the surface of his body kept on disappearing and being regenerated. It could be said that the Divine Emperor's body was regenerating at every moment. Even if it was damaged, it would recover instantly, and one would not be able to see the damage he had. In fact, when the Divine Emperor was struck by Fong Xingjian's punch, it seemed as if his entire face had been destroyed. However, only the structure of the outermost tremor layer had been destroyed. The Divine Emperor's body was unscathed. The Divine Emperor's body. Divine to his body. To the body to, and his body to use. To the Fong Emperors to say. This was the first time Fong Xingjian had encountered such a body structure. It could be said that the tremors on the surface of the Divine Emperor's body were able to dispel over 90% of the attacks and convert them into heat energy, which was then stored in his body as an energy source. The remaining attacks would continue to disappear as the particles in the Divine Emperor's body disappeared, replaced by new particles that appeared. The Divine Emperor let out a cold laugh and clenched his fist. His 6-meter-tall body unleashed explosive crackling sounds as he said coldly, "I have the body of a great shaman. I'm undying and indestructible. Even if the world perishes, I'll survive. You'll never be able to imagine my powers and how terrifying my background is. Trash, the thing you should regret the most in this lifetime is to make an enemy out of me." With a boom, the two of them collided fiercely like two meteors at the next moment. Violent powers turned all matter into dust, and kinetic energy was converted into heat energy. Eventually, flames soared up into the sky, piercing through the entire underground base and turning into a huge crater that was exposed to the outside world. Elsewhere, the 7 divine-level experts from the Tao Defiance Alliance were engaged in an intense battle. Almost at the very first moment, the entire 7 Saints' Great Golden Pagoda was opened up under Qiu Dao's command. Countless mechanical armies surged forth, but they were instantly killed by the light from 4 streams of martial will. However, the mechanical armies seemed to be endless. The Snake King, Xing, and the others did their best to kill them, but their numbers did not seem to decrease. This was especially the case when over 100 huge metal dragons hid over 10 kilometers away. They opened their mouths and spewed out streams of plasma that cut across the sky, encompassing toward the four of them. They then worked together with several hundred plasma cannons to wash the ground, shattering the clouds and destroying the mountains and rivers. Despite this, the four of them had joined forces to fend off the attacks with their martial wills. However, this made it even harder for them to break through. On the other side, Wantong maintained the anti-ether formation. Old Tian's battle intent was not high, and Xiao Dao was the only one who would occasionally appear with flashes to prevent the other party from breaking through the mechanical armies that were surrounding them. The Snake King let out an enraged bellow, and he turned into a glass-like color. No matter how the plasma lumps hit him, there was no effect. With a slight dash, he dashed out toward the huge metal dragons. This was the divine fiery physique that he had created over the years through his microscopic means. It allowed him to turn his conjured physique into an extremely powerful, heat-resistant material that was almost unaffected by 99% of heat attacks. However, he had just broken out of the encirclement when Xiao Dao appeared before him with a flash. Xiao Dao took the Big Dipper stance and exhaled a stream of black water that descended from the sky, encompassing toward the Snake King. This was the netherworld dead river that he had spent countless hours to refine ever since he had entered the microscopic realm. Not only could it freeze the movements of most physical substances, but it also contained the information remnants of the countless people who had died on Earth over the years, as well as the resentment, despair, and fury of several 100 million ordinary people. Once one was drawn into it, their conjured physique would be frozen, and their martial would be corrupted. It was an amazing martial technique that combined both offense and defense. At the sight of the netherworld dead river, the Snake King let out a cold snort. He knew that he could not take it head-on and could only retreat. Xiao Dao did not give chase, and a hint of disappointment flashed in the eyes of the four of them. It turned out that the Snake King's breakthrough had been an act. He had lured Xiao Dao to give chase and then surround him to kill him. However, Xiao Dao remained unperturbed, standing firmly at the periphery of the battle circle. He would only make a move to stop them when someone from the other party was about to break through. Otherwise, he would just watch as the mechanical armies depleted the four of them. However, seeing that the four divine-level experts were putting up a great fight and not giving up, Xiao Dao's eyes narrowed slightly. Then with a shake of his long robes, a cold light shot out, and a palm-sized palace appeared. The Snake King's pupils contracted abruptly, and he bellowed furiously, "Xiao Dao, what are you trying to do?" Xiao Dao smiled, and the palace instantly turned into the size of a field. The over 10 disciples inside were grabbed by him across space. Chapter 893. The clones they had left behind in the palace were about to stop him, but they were swept away by the netherworld dead river and dissipated completely. These clones only had 1% of the Snake King and the others' powers. How could they possibly fend off Xiao Dao's attacks? This Ice Soul Divine Palace could change its size, and it could hide in the molecular structure. It had been a way of retreat that everyone had left behind. However, Xiao Dao had shrunk it and stolen it, keeping it with him. Since they had become enemies, Xiao Dao would naturally resort to all means. He knew that even if he were to kill these disciples, the Snake King and the others would not surrender. However, even if he were to weaken their aura and cause them to lose their mental state slightly, increasing his chances of winning, it would still be a worthwhile deal for him. Over 10 disciples suddenly flew up into midair. Luo Haonan's new disciple, a Tanuki, as well as the Snake King's disciple, Lu Ying, and the others had all appeared. They had been hiding in the Ice Soul Divine Palace when they suddenly felt a gush of power attacking them. They lifted their eyes and saw a battlefield that stretched out for several hundred leagues. The world seemed to have been turned into a state of chaos, with only 4 streams of extremely majestic light in the center. They were surrounded by the millions upon millions of mechanical armies, but they did not seem to be at a disadvantage at all. Lu Ying said anxiously, "Master and the others are fighting a great battle against the Divine Emperor. What's going on? Didn't you want us to hide? Why have we appeared here?" Little Tanuki stared blankly at the battlefield in front of her. She was stunned by this terrifying scene. Although she had long heard that the heavenly generals could overturn rivers and seas and shatter mountains and rivers, how could hearing about it compare to seeing it with her own eyes? Qiu Dao sent out information currents to everyone present calmly. "Snake King, give up on resisting. Without the replenishment of ether particles, you'll die from exhaustion sooner or later. As for your disciples, they're all in my hands now. If you guys die, your legacies will be severed as well. What's the point?" Hearing that, the four people's countenances turned grim, and Zixing rebuked furiously. "Qiu Dao, are you still so shameless? To think that you implicate the juniors in our battle." Qiu Dao smiled and said, "Then if I were to surrender, would you guys let me and my subordinates off easily?" He let out a cold laugh, wanting to destroy the four people's battle intents. "I know that it's impossible for you guys to only have one clone in the Divine Palace, but after today's defeat, the Divine Emperor will no longer have any worries and will be able to focus on developing spaceships. At that time, he won't even have to worry about destroying the entire planet. With your remaining powers, how long can you guys hide for?" A hint of gloominess flashed on the faces of the four divine-level experts. The countenances of Lu Ying, Little Tanuki, and the others also changed drastically. They had not expected that Qiu Dao would side with the Divine Emperor, and their side was at an absolute disadvantage. Under the drastic change in the situation, the Qiu Dao alliance seemed to have reached a moment of life and death. At that moment, a muffled sound suddenly rang out from the depths of the earth. Following that, the earth trembled violently, and countless mountain ranges within a radius of 1,000 li began to collapse. Streams of water from the great rivers were jolted out. It was as if the heavens and earth were enraged. This terrifying power caused the many divine-level experts present to be slightly stunned. At the next moment, a fire pillar formed from plasma rose up from underground, instantly incinerating the entire underground base and the several 100 million mechanical army into ashes. With a flash, Fang Xingjian's body once again reassembled in midair. "It's Fang Xingjian." Everyone was taken by surprise. In the depths of the huge crater, a figure with a height of over 100 meters and a greenish-black color slowly floated up like a demonic god. With every move that figure made, the space trembled and the atmosphere dissipated. As the power in his body circulated, a series of muffled, thunderous sounds kept on exploding out. It was the Divine Emperor, who was fighting an underground battle with Fang Xingjian. The two of them had been fighting, destroying the underground base, causing the land within a range of 1,000 lis to tremble and the mountain ranges to collapse. Right now, they were fighting in the sky, appearing before everyone. During this process, the Divine Emperor's body became increasingly larger, and his powers continued to rise. Looking at the people in the sky, he let out a furious bellow. It was as if over 10 nuclear missiles had exploded in void space. Seething shock waves pierced through the entire atmospheric layer, revealing a stretch of pitch-black outer space. Everyone unleashed their martial will to fend it off. The Snake King's countenance changed. To think that the Divine Emperor has such powers. Zixing also drew in a cold gasp. Hints of deep worry flashed in the eyes of Luo Haonan, Ice Soul, and the others. All this while the Divine Emperor had only been using his mechanical army to kill them. He had never displayed such domineering powers before. In the distance, Qiu Dao let out a slight sigh. He looked at the scene before him with a complicated gaze and said through information currents, "Fellow Taoists, why do you think I've submitted to the Divine Emperor? The enemies of the original world, the great calamity in the future, and the Divine Emperor's technological development. All of these reasons are just one of them. The real reason is because of the Divine Emperor's valiance. It's because of his pure power. That power surpasses that of the mechanical army, surpasses yours and mine, and is invincible. With his strength, there's no one who can be a match for him in this heaven realm. If you don't see it with your own eyes, you'll never understand this kind of power. Everyone's countenances turned increasingly grim after hearing Qiu Dao's words. Just the prowess of the divine emperor's earlier bellow was enough to prove that what he had said was true. However, the divine emperor did not pay any attention to them at all. His eyes were fixed on Fang Xingjian, who was in midair, and he bellowed furiously. "Do you think you can escape?" At the next moment, his body brought about a series of strong gales, and with a dash, he compressed the air and created a vacuum passageway. He lashed out a punch toward Fang Xingjian. With this punch, the divine emperor did not hold back at all, unleashing his powers without restraint. As his fist cut across the air, kinetic energy turned into a tremendous amount of heat energy. His fist seemed to have assimilated into a huge sun, and countless particles in the air were pushed and heated up. Incandescent plasma kept on spreading out in all directions with his fist as the center, vaporizing everything it came into contact with. The divine emperor bellowed furiously, "I'll crush you." Fang Xingjian let out a cold laugh. Then, with a rumble, the divine emperor's fist collided fiercely with Fang Xingjian's fist. At the next moment, their fists, bodies, and legs collided wildly time and time again, urging their powers to keep on smashing toward each other's bodies. An even more terrifying shockwave accompanied the fight between the two, mixed with high-temperature radiation. The temperature of the atmosphere rose rapidly, and the entire land seemed to be burning up. Countless mountain rocks evaporated and disappeared, and even several tens of kilometers away, there were countless mechanical bugs exploding and emitting thick smoke. If this power were to continue to explode, it would probably destroy the entire Northeast Asia's ecological environment. Qiu Dao and Wan Tong looked at this scene in astonishment. It was as if they had not expected that there would be someone who could fight against the divine emperor head-on and not be at a disadvantage. The Snake King, Zixing, Luo Haonan, and the others were also astonished. Zixing wore a look of disbelief. To think that this Fang Xingjian has such terrifying powers. The Snake King smiled bitterly and said, "The martial will that he's displaying right now is over 10 times stronger than when he was fighting." Isol's countenance was extremely grim. "We can't let them continue fighting like this. The entire Northeast Asia will be destroyed by them." Chapter 894. Let's attack together and eliminate the divine emperor. The Snake King and the others bellowed at Fang Xingjian through information currents. Simultaneously, the four of them made their moves, and 4 gushes of martial power gushed out toward the divine emperor's body at light speed. If the divine emperor and Fang Xingjian were to continue fighting without any restraints, the entire Northeast Asia, or even the East Asia continent, will be wiped out. No one would be able to survive. The Snake King and the others, who wanted to change history and guide it forward, would naturally not be allowed to do so. However, it was impossible for them to stop the 2 of them from fighting. Instead, they wanted to help Fang Xingjian get rid of the divine emperor and end this battle. The Snake King's body lit up, and a strange-shaped long sword darted out. It was like a snake-shaped longsword. The moment it appeared, an overwhelming venomous aura came gushing out. Wherever it passed by, countless physical particles would start to degrade. This longsword, which was called the Curse Emperor, was the Snake King's trump card. It was forged from the spine of a huge divine-level ferocious beast and contained an endless power of degeneration. It could shake out the powers in the other party's body and keep on degenerating the other party's physical structure. In the past, 7 divine-level experts had died after using this Curse Emperor for a prolonged period of time. The relic that the Curse Emperor was in had even created a perilous zone of death within a range of 100 lis, destroying an entire city. Zixing let out a bellow, and a brilliant purple galaxy flowed out from between her brows. It was as if there were countless heavenly maidens singing and dancing within it. Her actions were extremely alluring. and they could instantly make any highly virtuous monk fall head over heels for her. They contained unrivaled illusory powers. What was even more amazing was that they would change according to the spectator's changes, ceaselessly turning into the enemy's favorite and most admired target. They would bring endless happiness to the enemy, and even if the enemy knew that they were fake, they would still find it hard to overcome. The ice soul put his palms together, and his entire body instantly turned grayish-white. He was like an air-dried rock, and his conjured physique seemed to have lost its liveliness. All of his powers seemed to have gathered between his palms, turning into a resplendent, icy blue pearl. This was an ultimate technique passed down by his sect, and it was called the Icy Boundary Pearl. It was capable of condensing all of one's strength and instantly erupting it. It would freeze all the physical and chemical reactions in an area of space and create an effect that seemed as if time had stopped. A hint of determination flashed on Luo Haonan's face. At this moment, he finally went all out. Streams of sword cheese rose up from his body, turning into a 3-foot-long green sword that kept on vibrating at a high speed of 3 million times per second. With a swoosh, the long sword, which seemed to be able to cleave the heavens and earth, slashed out toward the Divine Emperor's head. The 4 divine-level experts made their moves concurrently, each of them bringing out their trump cards. They wanted to defeat the Divine Emperor before them. As long as they could defeat the Divine Emperor, they would win. Old Tion's expression changed when he saw the 4 of them going all out. He shouted through the information currents, "Aren't we going to stop them?" However, neither Qiu Dao nor Wan Tong had any intention of stepping forward. Only Qiu Dao replied through information currents, "There's no need. Just watch, Old Tion. Your choice is not wrong. The Divine Emperor's strength is something that you won't be able to imagine." At the next moment, the 4 people's attacks were about to land on the Divine Emperor's body. However, the Divine Emperor did not even look at them. Instead, his body's power burst out explosively, and the space around him started to tremble. Then, with a sway of his palm, he waved it at an extreme speed. It was as if he had suddenly turned into 4 hands. A finger tapped on Luo Haonan's 3-foot-long greensword. With a kacha sound, the long sword that could slice through the earth was shattered into dust by the Divine Emperor's finger. Luo Haonan let out an agonizing cry, as if he had been struck across space. He spat out a large mouthful of blood, and his conjured physique weakened rapidly. With a light grab with his other hand, the myriad of stars and beauties that Zixing had sent out were brought into his hand. With a bang, they were crushed into dust. Zixing looked at this scene in disbelief. She had never seen anyone who could break through this move of hers with just a light pinch. As this move was broken, her martial will was also implicated. An intense pain came from her brain, and blood flowed out from her 7 apertures. The glow of her martial will all over her body started to flicker. The Divine Emperor continued to slap the ice demarcation pearl to and fro with one hand. In an instant, it was as if there were 1,000 afterimages that streaked past. At this moment, the Divine Emperor displayed an extremely exquisite fist art. His palm brought about many afterimages, and it was like a bronze bell that encompassed the ice demarcation pearl completely. In the end, all the cold cheese were locked within a small area, and then the Divine Emperor opened his mouth and swallowed them all. What? More than 2/3 of the Ice Soul's conjured physique immediately crumbled after losing the chilly ice delimitation pearl. He stared at the Divine Emperor, as if he could not figure out how strong the other party's physical body was to be able to swallow the chilly ice delimitation pearl in one gulp. The Snake King revealed a look of despair. His Curse Emperor leaped to and fro like a slithering snake that could penetrate void space. The Curse Emperor appeared indistinct, and it was impossible to see its tracks clearly. However, the Divine Emperor's outstretched palm seemed to be able to predict the future. No matter how the Curse Emperor dodged or leaped, it was still able to get closer to him. In the end, The Snake King could only watch as the Divine Emperor grabbed the Curse Emperor that was flying over. The Curse Emperor trembled violently, and many sharp teeth shot out from the body of the sword. The intense friction caused sparks to fly everywhere, and clouds of degeneration aura surged over, turning the surrounding air into microscopic particles. However, the Divine Emperor's palm was like the legendary god's hand that had grabbed onto a huge dragon. No matter how the Curse Emperor struggled, it remained unmoved. It also completely ignored the degeneration aura on the sword. With a light shake, the Divine Emperor scattered the martial will that the Snake King had attached onto the sword. Then, with a wave of his hand, he slashed out at Feng Xingjian without any restraints. With a rumble, as Feng Xingjian caught the sword with one hand, the Curse Emperor was unable to withstand the tremendous pressure from the two experts. With a bang, it shattered into pieces that scattered into the sky. Feng Xingjian seemed as if he had been pressed down by an entire planet. He collided into the ground, causing a mountain range that was over 30 kilometers away to collapse completely. Countless tectonic plates moved up and down with this collision, sending several 10 million tons of sand soaring into the sky. After a series of attacks, the Divine Emperor stepped into void space, and an overwhelming aura gushed out. The martial arts, power, and aura that he displayed within this 1,000th of a second were like those of the legendary King of Gods. Everything in the world was under his control, revealing an unrivaled dominance and prestige. The space within several hundred meters around him kept on distorting and changing due to the explosive power of his physical body. The four divine-level experts all revealed horrified expressions. It was as if they found it hard to believe that the Divine Emperor could become so powerful with just the power of his physical body alone. The Snake King said in astonishment, "Just his physical body alone can be so powerful? How is this possible?" Zixing cursed, "Damn it. Just based on the magnitude of his strength alone, he's probably about the same as a Tier 6 divine-level expert." Luo Haonan's conjured physique kept on shattering, and the flying sword that he had refined with his blood and sweat was destroyed. Over 70% of his martial will had dissipated. Hearing that, he revealed a bitter smile. Regardless of whether it's his impeccable realm or spatial translocation, his physical strength might even be above that of a Tier 6 divine-level expert. Chapter 895. The over 10 disciples were also completely shocked by this scene, and their faces revealed expressions of despair. It's over. There's no one who knows the Divine Emperor's opponent. Old Tion's eyes were wide open. Xiao Dao smiled and said, "Did you see that? I told you they would be sorry for what they said." Old Tion nodded in agreement. The Divine Emperor's actual body was so powerful that it caused one's hair to stand on end. What else was there to say? It was just that he did not understand. With the Divine Emperor's abilities, he would have been able to wipe out the entire Xiao Dao alliance. Then why? Xiao Dao smiled and shook his head, wearing an unfathomable expression. Concurrently, the Divine Emperor stepped into void space, walking toward the place where Feng Xingjian had fallen. "Feng Xingjian, do you see that? This is the difference between us. I've said it before. You'll regret what you've done today for all eternity." At the next moment, the remnants of the entire mountain range exploded with a boom. Countless shattered rocks soared into the sky, piercing toward the sky like reverse meteors. Feng Xingjian floated up slowly from the ruins and looked coldly at the Divine Emperor, like he was looking at a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. "It's true that you're very powerful. It seems that even with 30% of my powers, I still won't be able to deal with you." As he spoke, Feng Xingjian turned to look at Wantong. His gaze was like lightning, and two streams of infiltrating void sword intents darted through void space, shooting toward Wantong's body. Wantong and Xiao Dao had sensed the sudden inspiration's warning. The former moved his hands, and layers of stacking martial will wrapped around him like an eggshell. Xiao Dao opened his mouth and spewed out, sending the netherworld dead river gushing toward the sword intents. However, the infiltrating void sword intent transmitted through space. How could their puny means be able to fend them off? Under their disbelieving gazes, the infiltrating void sword intent seemed to be able to enter an unstoppable state. It pierced through the netherworld dead river and martial will, entering Wantong's mind. Wantong let out an agonizing cry and clutched his head, crying out in pain. Simultaneously, streams of lightning flashed in the sky, and ether particles filled up the space once again. 30% of my powers? I've only used 10% of my powers. The Divine Emperor looked at this scene in disdain. Do you think that you'll be able to defeat me just because you have ether particles? The Divine Emperor laughed out loud, like he was listening to an unprecedented joke. On the other hand, Feng Xingjian moved, and the surface of his entire body was gradually covered by a layer of silver. Heaven-piercing upper extremity, sword physique activated. At the same time, 4 beams of sword light crisscrossed the sky, appearing in the 4 directions of north, south, east, and west. After breaking Wantong's anti-ether formation, Feng Xingjian launched the fairy-slaying sword formation. Amidst his maniacal laughter, the Divine Emperor continued to shrink and condense. He went from a size of 100 meters to a height of over 2 meters, and the toughness of his body was raised to an unbelievable level. At the next moment, he took a step forward and instantly traversed a distance of 30 kilometers. The strong gales he brought along were like shock waves that swept across the surface of the earth, destroying countless mountains and hills. His fist also crossed a distance of 30 kilometers, squeezing the atmosphere, rubbing against matter, and igniting a plasma ball of light with a temperature of hundreds of thousands of degrees. The surroundings of his fist were in a state of chaos, and even space kept on distorting under the pressure of his fist force. This extremely domineering punch, propelled by pure physical strength, smashed out fiercely toward Feng Xingjian's chest. Under everyone's astonished gazes, the Divine Emperor's punch had reached a height that was hard for them to reach. No one thought that Feng Xingjian would be able to fend off this punch. Dodge quickly! The Snake King and Zi Xing shouted loudly through information currents. However, at the next moment, Feng Xingjian did not dodge. He took on the Divine Emperor's punch head-on with his chest. The entire world seemed to have fallen silent as the two of them collided. It was because the air within a range of 10 lis had been sucked dry by the Divine Emperor's punch, and the entire world seemed to have turned into a vacuum. The plasma ball of light instantly exploded, turning into a huge sun that encompassed the sky. However, faced with this gushing heat energy, the Divine Emperor looked at Feng Xingjian in a daze. Right now, Feng Xingjian did not even take a single step back after taking on the Divine Emperor's punch head-on, let alone getting injured. How is this possible? What ability did you use? The Divine Emperor bellowed furiously and punched out with both his fists, smashing out wildly toward Feng Xingjian like many meteors. Then, under everyone's astonished gazes, Feng Xingjian stood casually in void space, allowing the Divine Emperor's fist to smash on his chest, face, throat, and even his legs, smashing toward his knees, waist, and thighs. Streams of plasma light exploded as the Divine Emperor punched out. The space kept on shaking and distorting, and it was as if the entire world had been stirred into a state of chaos with the swinging of his fists. However, no matter how hard the Divine Emperor tried, no matter how much he went all out, his attacks were unable to make Feng Xingjian move in the slightest. The Divine Emperor once again kicked Feng Xingjian's stomach. This time around, a boom rang out. Feng Xingjian's calf was finally unable to withstand the incessant rebounding and was broken. The Divine Emperor's expression froze for a moment, as if he had not expected such a thing to happen. Why is this happening? What on earth is going on with your body? Feng Xingjian was expressionless. However, after the Divine Emperor stopped, Feng Xingjian grabbed the Divine Emperor's neck and flung him toward the sky with a rumble. Right now, under the dual explosive effects of his martial will at 5,200 points and the celestial eradication sword formation. His powers had already surpassed that of the Divine Emperor. After flinging the Divine Emperor high up into the sky with a single breath, Feng Xingjian's body moved, bringing along a long stream of air currents. He caught up to the Divine Emperor and smashed his fist toward the Divine Emperor's head with a rumble. The Divine Emperor let out an enraged bellow and also responded with a punch. However, the heaven-connecting upper extremity sword physique was so strong that even Feng Xingjian could only propel it for 30 minutes despite how majestic his martial will was. It was comparable to a neutron star and could be said to be the toughest existence in the universe. With this collision, the Divine Emperor's fist was pierced through and exploded. Feng Xingjian then punched out again. The Divine Emperor let out an astonished cry, and his other fist kept on slapping, spinning, and twitching. However, it was like an ant shaking a big tree, unable to do anything to Feng Xingjian's punch in the slightest. The Divine Emperor could only watch as a huge hole was punched through his chest. Intense air currents passed through his back like a white dragon, passing through the atmospheric layer and blowing toward outer space. The Divine Emperor bellowed furiously, "Stop it, Feng Xingjian. If you kill me, my mother won't let you off." Feng Xingjian's expression was emotionless. He punched out once again, propelling his fist with the heaven-connecting upper extremity sword physique. It was like a white dwarf smashing out, crushing through the Divine Emperor's stomach. Amidst the distortions in space, the Divine Emperor's body was smashed into two. My mother comes from a supreme race in the multivariate universe. If you kill me, even if she has to traverse countless worlds and annihilate countless races, she'll still help me take revenge. Your family, your people, your country, all of them will be destroyed. Feng Xingjian said calmly, "Since she's here, I'll kill her as well." He put out one hand and grabbed the Divine Emperor's head. Under everyone's stunned gazes and the Divine Emperor's indignant and vengeful gaze, Feng Xingjian crushed the Divine Emperor's head with a rumble. Although the Divine Emperor's physical body was special, he did not have the immortality of a martial arts knight's brain. After his head was crushed by Feng Xingjian, the Divine Emperor was completely dead. In that instant, the entire place fell dead silent, leaving only Feng Xingjian standing proudly above the clouds. He watched as the Divine Emperor's physical body turned into pieces, dissipating from his fingertips and scattering into the sky. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.